All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the 7th and final episode of Max and Ruby, a podcast with slides where people talk about Ruby with me, Max. I am your host, the Red Mage, Eldena Doublecast, aka Clock and Wall Torture. I use any and all pronouns, just whatever you want, don't care. You can find me on Twitter at Doublecast, spelled with a 5 instead of an S. My Tumblr is currently Dancing Stars on Meme, which is my holiday, my Halloween URL. But knowing my editing schedule, by the time this goes up, I'll be back to Doublecast, so kind of irrelevant. I am joined today, as always, by a wonderful panel of guests. When I go to your slide, please let everyone know your name, your pronouns, if you make content, what kind of content do you make, and where people can find you on social media.
Hello, I'm Allie. I go by any pronouns, and I have a Twitter and Instagram at Antatee, where I draw in between being a 3D animation student full-time. Mostly K-pop art. Sorry to the parents
we
who
hate your
raised me.
pussy.
And although actually recently I have drawn a little bit of RWBY fan art, I crawled out of hell for like 2 seconds to do it. You can check me out there. It
was so funny seeing like you do a piece of RWBY fan art and then having it do like really well and like reach the top of the subreddit and everything.
Yeah, why do I draw K-pop fan art?
Just make you question your life.
The fandom's really nice, so I can understand why you would want to engage.
Yeah, exactly.
Got him! Brendan, this is you.
Sorry. It was delayed for me. Hello, this is me. I'm Brendan or Jello. Either works. He, him pronouns. My Twitter is just my name, Brendan Blaber. It's Blabber with 1 B. On YouTube, I am known as Jello-Apocalypse. I make videos that are called So This Is Basically. I'm working on one this second, like a bastard, in the middle of a podcast. I was very nicely invited to. I also have a Tumblr. It's Jello-Apocalypse. My Twitter is more active, but more sad.
That's a classic trade-off there.
I'm Maria. I use she, her pronouns. I don't make content. I just shitpost. My Twitter is at the Queen of Memes, and my Tumblr is at Shitty Winged Eyeliner. I post memes and leftism and anime stuff.
Your content is pictures of your cat.
Oh yeah, I forgot. That's a very important part of it too.
Derby is like a critical element of your Twitter. You gotta bring them up.
Hey, I'm Pug. I use she, her pronouns. I work in animation by day. I post problematic tweets by night. You can find me basically anywhere as Cappuccino.
It's okay that you post problematic tweets because you delete them as soon as they go up.
All of my thoughts are limited edition.
You gotta be there right when it drops. It's like a Supreme event. All right, let's get straight into errors and omissions because this episode is probably going to take a while.
Music.
Oh yes, got it. Yeah, it's the Alpha Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire Trick House music is what I use for this. Okay, so in the last episode we were talking about the Bees versus Atom fight, and I mentioned that a lot of the animation in that fight was actually old Monty work in progress animation that he had done for what was supposed to be like a whole long fight between Yang and Atom in that scene where she, at the end of Volume 3, where she just gets, like, one-shotted and gets her arm cut off. That was originally supposed to be a whole fight, but they cut that. Well, according to Zonix, only about 20 seconds of that animation was Monty WIPs. Most of it was, like, the vast majority of it was original. And, like, the stuff that they did use was, like, highly unfinished. So the degree to which that stuff was recycled was a bit overstated. Grunge Hammer replied to a joke I made about the members of Team RWBY committing arson, because I made some comment about how, like, Blake burns down her house in Volume 5, Weiss burns down the, I forget what that farm is called, but the farm where they fight the Apathy in Volume 6. I was like, Yang and RWBY need to burn a building down so we can have everyone commit arson. Well, it turns out that Yang and RWBY do in fact burn down a building, or at least are implied to burn one down in Season 3, Episode 5 of Chibi. because there's some gag where they do like a girls' night out, and they're like, I wonder what like fun, like wacky hijinks we'll get up to, and then it just cuts to like a building on fire and like Yang and RWBY looking really proud. So that's so yeah, like Team RWBY just commits arson. That's sort of their thing. In the midst of our discussion of the labor issues at Rooster Teeth last episode, I did a little insert where I let everyone know that the recent, I don't even know if you want to call it a scandal, the happenings at Rooster Teeth where they had to fire 2 of their employees for having sexual relationships with fans, some of whom were minors. I had to point out that came out after we did the podcast, so it didn't seem weird that it didn't come up when we were recording. Nikidia pointed out that in that little insert I did, I referred to them both as members of Achievement Hunter. It turns out one of them was a member of Achievement Hunter, but the other one was a member of Funhouse, which is a very, like, actually correction, but fine.
Yeah, it's, like, barely mad.
But fine, okay. This is a very actually section of the podcast, so I'll allow it. But watch yourself, McCoy.
I don't even know what Funhouse is.
It's better if you don't. I just know it as the place that stole Elise Willems away from Easy Allies / game trailers way back in the day. And then finally, CF added some commentary to the apathy because they pointed out that the apathy were... They just provided the apathy origin story, which is basically, it was Miles Luna's idea, and it was based off of a, like, spooky looking picture of a scarecrow he found on Reddit one day, and it was that and a short story that's actually like a very famous short story by Herman Melville, the author of Moby Dick, called Bartleby the Scrivener, which is about a guy who works at a lawyer's office as a scribe or a scrivener, who basically starts doing all his work at first, and then at some point just starts replying to every request for him to do something with, I would prefer not to, and then, like, slowly just, like, starts doing less and less and less, and he basically just, like, sits at his desk all day staring out the window, and then he, like, stops leaving the office, and he basically just becomes, like, a permanent fixture there. People use it as, it's sort of considered, like, a classic, like, literary depiction of depression, basically. Which makes sense for why, like, the guy who owned the farm that the apathy was on was called Bartleby, and also, you know, the whole theme of, like, just giving up. That's also where the phrase "I would prefer not to" comes from, which if you are involved in leftist Twitter, you recognize from Slavoj Žižek's shirt.
My man.
Ideology. Alright, we can't get into leftist shit today. We have to talk about RWBY Volume 7. This is a fun one. First of all, before we get into it, surprise, surprise, I added another person to the panel just when you thought I was done. So, Brandon, let everyone know, how did you get into RWBY?
Oh boy, so 2 of my friends had already seen Volume 1 and 2, and 3 was just about to come out. And they said, hey, do you want to watch RWBY? And I was like, actually, my first interaction with RWBY was someone years and years ago approaching me if I wanted to do an abridged series with them. And they presented me the script, and it had the N-word in the first line. So I did say no.
Intelligent decision.
And after that, I was like, I don't really want to be near this, whatever it is. And then,
man, that's a bad first impression even for RWBY.
That wasn't, like, I wasn't assuming that was RWBY's energy either. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna take a backseat to this one. My friends watched it, and I was like, oh, is it good? And they did the classic, is RWBY good? Response.
Yep.
I watched season 1, was mostly laughing at it until the Nevermore fight. And then I was like, oh no, is this good at all? And they were like, kind of. And it kept doing that back and forth. And then I just watched the rest of it as it went out. And then I made a RWBY video, which the casting team for RWBY finds really funny. And I get to audition for RWBY now because I'm a voice actor.
Are we allowed to put that in the podcast, or is
yes,
that okay?
I can't tell you anything about what's on the sides, but I have auditioned for characters in RWBY, and I don't think that's a faux pas to put on there.
Brendan,
also, I want to clarify. They did not like see my video and go, very funny man, let's get him on the audition list. Like I was already on their mailing lists for stuff.
Brendan has industry knowledge, so I have to make sure that nothing that's under like an NDA is slipping out here.
Yeah, I will not say anything that's like, here's the hot deets about something that is obviously not a cool story to tell.
Right.
The one, and this is, since this has come out, this is not this is something that's okay to say, because I did get to see the Clover and Crow recast sides. And my first read on Clover was, are they giving Crow a boyfriend?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna need you to save those thoughts, because we have a whole separate...
That's the end of my
thoughts. We have a separate fucking slide for that. Oh boy. All right. We gotta keep things moving. We got to keep things organized. All right. We gotta do first impressions of this volume, starting with Allie.
Yeah, I liked this volume a lot when it came out. I feel like it has a really good balance of fights and plot developments. I feel like the villains feel actually competent for once, which is nice, because it feels like there's a threat in the show. Despite all, like, I guess some of the weird shipping controversy, I still, honestly did enjoy all the plot points of it very much.
Pug?
So I went back and checked my power ranking, and Volume 7 is my favorite, and that will very quickly become apparent why, I think.
Yes. Maria?
This is also very likely my favorite volume. I was having a great time. Well, I was having a great time for the last couple episodes, which we'll get into.
Lol.
But I thought this is just a really, really strong volume.
Excellent. And Brendan?
Yeah, no, pretty much agree. From a production and storytelling standpoint and fight standpoint, I think it's the best one.
Yeah, I would agree.
This volume has everything.
It really does. Yeah, I definitely agree. This is, if not my favorite, in sort of my top 3. I think 3 gets a lot of points for sort of the pure, shock value and the drama of it all. 6 has a lot of sentimental value to me because I'm a Bumblebee shipper. But 7 I think is the most overall consistent in terms of quality and writing and just overall storytelling. So yes, if not my favorite, very, very close to the top. All right, so since we're all pretty positive on this volume, it should be a lot of fun to go through the good. Let's talk about the stuff we liked. First of all, Penny's back!
Cute!
Praise be.
I do want to tell you, upon seeing this slide for the first time in the caption under that image, I did take some psychic damage.
Oh, if you're
seeing the word bomb.
Dude, if you're not taking psychic damage from my slides, I'm not making my slides correctly.
Well, then I guess you're nailing it.
Boom. All right. Yes. Allie, you put in this slide, Penny's new design makes me ooh-woo, and I would like to second that ooh-woo.
It's so cute. I just love her boots are just so crazy, the way they have rocket jets on the bottom of them.
They can fly.
I love her mechanical bow in the back of her hair, and her hair just feels really soft and fluffy.
Yes, it's great. She's like the world's cutest Xbox. I don't know if I like that. I was telling Pug the other night, because she has the little green power symbol on I think
her hair is Dorito dust.
Oh no.
Gamer GF.
Gamer GF. Penny's. I have some mutual whose display name is, I think, Penny Polendina's Minecraft Twitch channel, and I hope they get a big kick out of this.
10 out of 10 would watch.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. But yeah, I was saying how she has the little green power symbol on her bow, both on her neck and on her hair, and I was like, if her aura breaks, it has to turn red because she's an Xbox, so she has to red ring. It just makes sense.
Red ring of death, and why would you want that for Penny?
I don't want her to actually die again, but that would, I just want the joke, Pug. I just want the joke. I live for the joke. Maria, you had a whole point. You said you had a whole rant about why bringing Penny back from the dead is good, actually.
Yes, I do. So this came about because, okay, I was gonna say like a who shall not be named, like one of those RWBY YouTubers whose
Lol.
entire YouTube career is just shitting on RWBY and under the guise of like reviews, but I actually don't remember which one it was. I was watching their Volume 7 review, and it basically started off with them saying, I forget if they either dropped it once they saw that Penny was back because they disliked that so much, or they like it tainted their entire experience of the volume. But basically, I have what I think is a pretty strong argument as to why bringing Penny back from the dead is fine, which is A, you can do so without having to like pull any strings. Like we've already established that she's a robot. So she can be rebuilt. Like you don't have to do anything to bring her back, you just rebuild her, and we've established now in this volume that you can't do so indefinitely, so she has some kind of mortality now. Also, bringing Penny back from the dead doesn't affect the mortality and the permanence of death for any other character. Because usually once you start bringing characters back from the dead, it like fucks with the stakes, and it's like, oh, okay, well you can just kill people off and bring them back, who cares? But Kira's still dead, Adam's still dead. If any of these characters other than Penny die, they're not coming back. So it's fine. Like, it's good. We all love Penny. We all wanted to see more of her. So everyone who complains about this is wrong.
I agree. I think the funny thing about Penny coming back is that when Penny first died, I think a lot of people, well, I mean, obviously lots of people were heartbroken and a lot of people just dropped the show. But there were also a lot of people who were like, oh, she's a robot, they'll just rebuild her. We can rebuild her. We can make her stronger. But then I think it was smart to do it here, both because it like makes sense, because it's like they're going to Atlas, so of course if she's going to come back, it'll be here. But I think having her gone for 3 volumes afterwards was like just the right amount of time to make the audience think like, God damn, they're actually not bringing her back. So when she does get rebuilt, it's actually kind of a surprise.
I was not into Penny in the first 3 volumes. I didn't understand why she was there, and I didn't understand her, like, I get that she's the first sacrificial lion of that season before Pyrrha, just to kind of ease you into it, and that works. But I remember people being like, "Oh no, Penny, like she was such good friends with Team RWBY, and especially RWBY." I'm like, I don't know if I buy that. I don't know if like they were fine, like they knew each other. And then weirdly, when she comes back, their reaction is less, oh, thank God my friend is back. It's more like bafflement and then just immediate acceptance, and then like, yeah, we're casual friends. I'm like, that's actually what it would be. And like weirdly, I think that's consistent. And that's the thing that if they ever brought Penny back, I was expecting to be the most annoyed about, was like RWBY would be in tears, like my great friend Penny, who I loved so much. It's like, you guys hung out for like 4 hours collectively. So
and then she was like, we're friends.
Yeah, it was also kind of a one-sided friendship for like a third of that. But like, yeah, no, now she's back, and God, I think my initial words were, man, I'm embarrassed by how much that design is doing it for me. It's a lot of my weaknesses, especially the new haircut.
LMAO. Yeah, I mean, if you're asking why she's there, the answer is to look adorable. Like, that's that. You don't need any more than that in this show, IMO. But yeah, actually, speaking of Penny's friendship with RWBY, another thing I wanted to touch on in this slide is that this volume is real nuts and bolts hours, I would say.
I really like the line when they're in the truck and Penny says, like, RWBY, I'm so glad to be working with you in a professional environment.
Oh my God.
It just feels really wholesome.
Just gals being co-workers.
So many good Penny lines.
Dude, oh my God, she has great, we have so much to catch up on. I cannot wait. Loud siren blares. It seems we will have to wait.
I watched this a year ago and I don't remember any of the little details, so it's nice hearing these lines again.
It's all right. We got caught up for you.
The humor is just on point.
Yeah, there's some good jokes this volume. The scene that drove me insane, Maria, is the one that you were just talking about, where they're in the truck together, because you can see like There's a whole they drag this out, and I'm like, whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing, where you see RWBY like come very, very close to like leaning on Penny's shoulder, and she like keeps leaning closer and closer, and then like the split second she's about to touch it, like they stop the truck because Robin is outside. I was like, come on. They're just messing with us at this point. Other good things about Penny this volume, and actually I think one of her strongest points, is all of her conversations with Winter are really interesting and do a lot for, I think, both characters. Something I was thinking about rewatching this is how, like, the sort of contrast between the two, where Winter is still very much committed to Ironwood and is refusing to consider that he might be acting, like unjustly or inhumanely, basically. And then Penny, who is just like, it's funny because she's like a literal robot who is like supposed to be, who is like given orders to do this thing, but like she has sort of more of a conscience in that she like has more of an emotional understanding of what she's trying to do. And so she immediately sees the problem here. And it's like ironic that like the robot has more of a sense of humanity than the human.
The little exchange at the Weiss house where Winter says something along the lines of, "You wouldn't understand," and Penny interprets that as Winter saying she wouldn't understand the emotions, is so horrible and gut-wrenching and lovely.
Yes. Hits you right in the feels.
It really does. I also really like both of those characters, so it's great to see them both get a lot of good dialogue throughout the volume.
Oh, yeah.
Also, Penny's like, "It gives me personal feelings" line.
I love that line so much. It's like, so like, yes, queen, go ape shit.
Yeah.
We'll get into that a little bit in Maiden Bowl too, but yeah, that one
Which doesn't have its own slide.
Okay, look, this volume has a lot of good shit about it. I had to condense it somehow.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's cool. It's whatever. Also, Maiden Penny.
Yeah. I'm still losing my shit over that.
That was so fun. It also
She's
like
a real girl.
Yes, complete the Pinocchio metaphor.
Yeah, and it was even a blue fairy too.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've discussed before how like one of like the weaknesses of RWBY is just how I think this show has like a really bad habit of mixing metaphors, because it has like so many fairy tale allegories going at once that they bleed into each other in weird and stupid ways. But I think Penny's stuff is like generally pretty good.
Agreed.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Penny's great. I don't know how much more we have to say about this.
We stan.
We stan. We have no choice but to stan. All right. Some other nice stuff from this volume is we get a whole bunch of new characters who, if nothing else, their designs slap silly. First of all, we have the Aesops. I feel like these characters are like a bit divisive in the fandom, I would say, or like some people are a lot more into them than others. Allie, did you have any particularly strong impressions of these guys going on?
Kind of like I guess like a plot or like character contrast to Team RWBY, and how they're very like work over like friendship, which of course plays really well into the fight that they have later on. In terms of characters, I mean, they're very like kind of just like archetypes, except I guess kind of Clover might have like a little bit more depth to him, just because he's the main one. I think they're all have really like interesting fight styles though, and they do a good job putting that in contrast with the Team RWBY's abilities too. I think the fight they have against the Grimm inside the mine showcases the way they interact with each other really well, and how it's very like short to the point, and they don't have a lot of like personal attachment to one another. It's just like a nice contrast to the RWBY crew, including Team, I guess Ranger and Oscar, where they're very much like, we're friends, saving the world together.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I refer to Jean, Oscar, Norin Red's Team Orange, which I know puts Oscar as the leader, so some people don't like it, but it's like, come on, it's a color. You gotta go for the color if you can. Yes, I think that's really like the strength of the Aesops as characters, is that they provide this contrast to Team RWBY, where you see sort of like, even though the Aesops are sort of like more, I guess, like they're stronger on paper, I think is the way to put it. There are those sort of intangibles that Team RWBY has in the way that they work together, and, you know, the power of friendship that gives them that little extra edge. That we'll get into that in the fight. But I think you were right on the money about like the fight they had in the mines. I think that whole episode is actually one of the best examples of like showing and not telling in this show, which is so rare. Like, this show has such a problem with just like dumping exposition on you, or like either being like way too obvious about shit, or like just like barely presenting information that should probably be like a more prominent element of the story. And I think that episode does a really good balance of like establishing sort of the personalities of all these characters, establishing how they work together, establishing what their powers are, and setting up a lot of stuff that'll pay off later in the season, especially with like, for example, RWBY learning that her semblance lets her like actually turn into rose petals and not just move really fast, so that she can like go around things, right? Like that had some really good planning and payoff with her exchange with Harriet. Pug, what was your you have any thoughts on these guys?
Is it time, or should I be waiting?
Actually, you know what? Let's come to you last, just so you can hold your.
I'm just trying to keep myself together.
I understand. Maria.
I thought these were really interesting. I thought they were a really good foil for Team RWBY, because like these are, I think they say they're all like handpicked because their fighting styles are specifically like chosen because they all go well together, and then it's like at the end because they're all separate, they're not as good. I really liked Clover. I think Clover was just like so slick and super entertaining to watch, especially in his interactions with Crow. So, you know, until they met their fate, I thought they were pretty fun to watch.
Definitely.
And also, like, I like that they're not super serious either, because, you know, they're ultimately, you know, they're like the best huntsman in Atlas, and they're loyal to Ironwood, and they do all these like super secret missions, but they're also pretty like you have people like Elm and Marrow who like they have some comic relief too.
Yeah, exactly. They're not just like they're not all completely humorless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one other thing. Actually, wait. Brendan, do you have thoughts on these guys?
I like the dog one is named Yarrow, right?
Marrow.
Sorry, I'm thinking of something else. Marrow is the one who made these guys work for me, because like we can talk about this later. I have thoughts on the morality of Ironwood and his crew.
Oh yes.
And less because I don't believe any of those things would happen, but more I'm just like, no human acts like this. And Yarrow is the one who's like going, guys, most of the time. And for me, that's all I needed. Just one man who gets it. And I was the happiest it was him. Called him Yarrow again.
You did?
Because he's my favorite. So I give him a yes. So I combine it. Totally save that. Smooth as silk. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I'm with you on Marrow. I think he adds like a certain layer of depth for me, not just in that he has a bit more of like his moral compass seems a little better aligned than the rest of them, but also because like you can tell they have like multiple little instances of them basically like bullying him a little bit, and I like that element because it establishes that these guys like are not best friends. They were just sort of put together, and they do not, you know, view themselves they don't view each other all as equals and all as like partners in the way that Team RWBY does. And also like one of the rare examples of like any degree of subtlety from the show, because Marrow is the only Faunus, and Atlas is known as like the racist kingdom. So if that was going to happen, it would make sense for it to happen here. Yeah. And I think that is sorry, go on.
Just one little small note because I just remembered it. I think Ace Operatives, Aesops Fables is one of the best puns, and like, I think that's one of the most clever fairy tale things they've done in the whole show.
Actually, yes. Also, the fact that like all of them are based off a different Aesop's fable, which is really cool. It's like some of them are like really clever too. Like Marrow is, I think, the dog and his reflection, and then he gets beat by Weiss, whose whole thing is mirrors. It's just lots of fun little details like that. Okay, Pug.
Yes. So for my sanity, I'm gonna separate things, canonical events between Crow and Clover, and discourse about them separately. So please don't think that I'm having giggles at queer baiting, because that's absolutely not the situation. But I spent the entirety of Volume 7 laughing so hard that Max actually had to pause the show so I could like collect myself.
It was about
so we could keep watching.
10 minutes of uncontrollable laughter.
Yeah, I just there's something so fucking self-indulgent about every Crow and Clover interaction. It's so... If we were talking about it in terms of fan fiction, I would say every interaction they have is the italicized O moment. If we're talking about it in terms of animation production, I would say this is a first draft on your dialogue and bring me another one. I mean, like, genuinely, I just found out working alone tends to be for the best. Well, I think that's a shame. And then Crow trips. Like, it's so ridiculous and absurd that these two characters are paired together in this way. I think I had guessed what Clover's semblance was before it was revealed, and then when it was confirmed, I just started screaming.
Yes.
It is some sort of soulmate AU nonsense that I myself would never be able to write because it is so over the top. But somehow I think it really works for these two. I think it's really funny. I've watched this volume 3 times now, and I have always had to pause for fits of laughter. Yeah, I don't know. It's just the whole indulgence of having these two characters paired together so strongly in this way is absurd, but I think fun.
The line where he says "lucky you" and then winks at him, like, come on.
Or the scene in the Schnee Manor where I think like they say good luck and then Crow's like, oh well, they have you, don't they? And just like the little face they give they give each other. It's just, oh my god.
We have an entire slide for fair game specifically, so we will get into this, but yeah, just a taste of what is to come on that discourse. Holy shit. Yeah, it's comical. Okay, another fun little thing they added in this volume is Robin Hill and her happy huntresses. I may be like slightly biased towards thinking Robin is really cool because my timeline is like all WLWs who think she's hot, and like I can't argue with that. But I want to see how other people were feeling on her. Maria, did you have particularly strong opinions?
So I'm kind of meh on Robin right now, to be honest, just because like I don't really know what they plan on doing with her. Like I think it says later in the vault, like her semblance is obviously really useful, and they don't use it in like ways that would be in like they don't use it to the full extent of its utility, and like I don't really know where they're going with her. She's just, especially like in the last fight, she's just kind of there. She kind of feels like a third wheel for Crow and Clover right now. I don't really know. I like her more than I dislike her, but
Allie?
I think she's okay. I do like her quite a bit just because she's voiced by Christina V, I feel like, and I like Christina V a lot.
Facts.
But I think the actual like dialogue I feel like she was given was not great. She feels like a very quippy character, which is kind of strange to me. She, as like a political candidate, is not the most interesting to me either. And like Maria's saying, I don't know like what they're going to do with her, because I feel like her whole purpose in this volume was to be the opposing political candidate against Jock. But now that that's over, it's kind of like, what is the point now? So I agree. It feels like I'd be surprised if they did anything very interesting with her after this point. I do appreciate that she like she loses the election. She's like, all right, time to just steal shit and like, wreak havoc. I like her like squad of huntresses, especially. Is Fiona's the sheep girl, right?
Fiona is the sheep girl.
Yeah, she's so cute, and I wish nothing but the best for her, even though I don't know if we'll ever see her again.
We all want good things for Fiona. I think so. One of the downsides of making this podcast for the volume that premiered most recently is that, and I have thoughts on this for another slide later, there are going to be plot points where whether or not this is good depends a lot on what they do with it later. And since we don't have hindsight to see how that pans out, we have to kind of make some guesses and sort of just go off first impressions. So it maybe someone watching this like a year from now will think our takes are bad, but we'll just have to live with that. Brendan, did Robin and her happy huntresses particularly strike you in any way?
It was nice to see a character who was not like I know they kind of presented her as the like chaotic good Robin Hood, but it was nice to see a character who was just a good guy and not like, you know, that shit they always pull with Oz where it's just like, oh, the things he has done. He gave us the curse of being able to turn into a bird, the moral ambiguity. It's like, all right, man, I see what you're doing. It's not working. And they didn't do any of that with Robin, and I appreciate that. At least not to any significant degree. Anyone who follows me on Twitter knows I have a massive affinity for sheep girls. So very here for Fiona. Wish there was more Fiona. I was kind of horrified in a weird way hearing you guys be like, I don't know what they're going to do with her, because my immediate reaction was, well, she's done, right? She won't be in the show anymore because her point is over. And then I was like, oh, fuck, this is RWBY. She's going to be around forever.
She's just going to be there not doing anything.
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah.
Bro, I am literally just standing here.
I think it'll be like how in like volume 6 they leave Ilya to deal with like the White Fang. I assume when they leave Atlas, Robin's gonna be like the one that I'll deal with everything else here while you guys save the world.
Weirdly, I don't know anything about anything. I was kind of under the impression the rest of the show was gonna take place in and around Atlas. Like, just because, like, what other Wizard of Oz friends do we have to visit? And like, Salem's here. Where are we gonna go?
We know they have to go to Vacuo eventually to deal with the other relic. How they will contrive that into existence, who knows? That's just one of those.
Obviously, Robin just takes it out of her pocket and is like, don't worry, guys. I got this for you. I'm going to head out. And then she disappears and solves 2 problems immediately. Yeah, no, that I mentioned earlier, big problems with the overall theme. Like, my biggest problem with this volume is how RWBY acts towards Ironwood in the first half and everything that results from that. And who do we tell what truths to? And then the fact that Robin has the power that she has, I was like, okay, well, she's kind of like a fringe figure in this society. I can see why, like, maybe Ironwood's faction wouldn't know about this power, or maybe it's a secret. No, it wasn't. We learn later, so there is no excuse for anything, which is exceptionally frustrating.
I think for me anyway, the reason why I thought that like they weren't taking advantage of the fact that she has the lasso of truth or whatever for her semblance is because, like, you know, if they're going to use her as a lie detector, they have to let her in on whatever information they're trying to suss out of people. And I don't think they, at least at first.
That worked sometimes. Not all of the time was that an excuse. Especially when everyone's like, yo, Jacques doing some weird shit. Can you give him a handshake and ask him a question? And there are points. I'd have more specific ones, but again, I watched this exactly a year ago.
I could see there's a couple moments where you're like, if you two would just talk to each other a little bit more, you could resolve this.
Yeah, like I don't want to be CinemaSins about it and be like, why didn't they use the power here? Ding.
Ding.
But there are some moments where it's like they are so stupid for not doing this.
Oh yeah, we'll get into the cinema sins shit in the next few slides. Pug.
Yeah, in typical RWBY fashion, I think Robin Hill and the Happy Huntresses are characters that have fantastic designs and they have no idea what to do with them.
Typical.
Yeah, it's very typical. I think the anti-establishment character being a political candidate is wasted. But yeah, I could be very wrong about this, but I don't imagine her kind of fulfilling that potential in the next volume. But I'd love to be pleasantly surprised.
I am with you on that. All right, so another great thing about this volume, and one of the things that like really stuck out to me the most, especially on the rewatch, I noticed, it feels like the fights got a dramatic upgrade, even from volume 6, when I thought they were already sort of getting back on track. Allie, I think you are sort of the most persnickety when it comes to the fights. Do you want to opine on this a bit?
Yeah, this has probably... It might be my favorite fight, it's hard to say, but the Ironwood versus Watts fight, I think, is just so good. Something definitely to take note is, so the environment, they make really good use out of it. It has these changing gravity blocks. Something like that is so hard to convey in space sometimes. It's really easy to get lost where you are. They do a really good job keeping track of where the characters are, what block is changing gravity force. And I just love the fact that they both have like pretty much the exact same weapon, but because Watts is obviously not as good a fighter as Ironwood, he's compensating for it by having control of the environment. It's a really well balanced fight, and I just love that they shoot their gun and that just like propels them around the arena, kind of like very older classic RWBY fights.
Yeah, the sense of momentum is definitely there. But yeah, that's a really good fight for just taking advantage, like you said, of the environmental hazards. I also love, I know this is like so cliche, the like, oh, like I counted how many bullets you shot, like, and now I know you're out of ammo. Like, it's such a cliche, but it's so fun to watch anyway.
I didn't really understand what he was counting until I think maybe my second watch through. I was like, why is he counting? But it makes sense now. I'm probably just a fool for not realizing that. Cool, he starts at like 20, which is like such a high number for like a gun like that.
The 20 chamber revolver.
Usually it's 6. So I'm like, 20? What is he counting down from?
The barrel must be huge.
Yeah, it's a huge bullet barrel.
Yeah, so I mentioned in Errors and Omissions how like the apathy were partly based off like a spooky scarecrow pic that Miles saw on Reddit. I'm convinced a lot of shit in RWBY is just things Miles saw on Reddit that he wanted to put into the show, because apparently Watts's gun is based off of some custom revolver with a comically large barrel that made the front page of Reddit a few years ago, and Miles saw it and was like, well, that's going in the show.
Oh my god.
I wish I didn't know these things. It would make my experience better.
Yeah.
I mean, in fairness, that's how it be when you're a writer. It's just stealing that's a cool idea. Yoink.
I will say, if there's anything that you could steal to put in RWBY, a ridiculous-looking custom gun would be it. Like, it's in character for the show, I'd say.
The show is centered around ridiculous custom weapons.
Exactly. So I'm also a huge fan of the Ironwood v. Watts fight. For me, my favorite fight this volume is RWBY versus Aesops. I think this might actually be the best fight in the show. This fight was so good that after it first aired, I went into OBS and screen grabbed the entire fight so that I could just have it saved on my computer because it was just so much fun to rewatch it like in isolation, which I don't do with any of the other RWBY fights. I don't go back and like watch them the way a lot of people do. But yeah, this one is like so satisfying on both in terms of the choreography, which is great as it is like the whole volume, but from like a narrative perspective, it's super good. After this aired, I saw a lot of people arguing. It was like, well, the Aesops have like, you know, so many more years of training and they're supposed to be like the best hunters and huntresses in all of Atlas. Like, why does RWBY just get to... It was a lot of people accusing them as basically like giving Team RWBY plot armor here and letting them win a fight they shouldn't have won. But I feel like they make it pretty clear why the Aesops lost that fight, which is they're not all on the same page. They're like arguing with each other mid-fight. They're not coordinating the way that Team RWBY is, especially in the way that like Team RWBY uses like team attacks. So for example, like Elm and Vine, they're fighting together, but they're not using like team attacks and coordinating in the way that Blake and Yang are. And like that's a connection we actually like touched on earlier in the volume when, you know, they were like killing those Grim with Marrow, and he was like, hey, why do you guys always work together? Shouldn't you like branch out? And then they like pull some crazy shit, and he's like, all right, cool, you're good. And so sort of showing like what the actual advantage that Team RWBY has there, I thought was done super, super well. And there are so many moments in that fight that, for lack of a better word, made me pog. Like, first of all, Weiss actually wins a 1v1 for once.
Oh my god. So I always watch RWBY as a group because that's always better. And I've watched it with the same people and added a few people since volume 1. And this fight, we were just screaming come on, Weiss, you've never beat a sentient opponent before. You can do it. And I think when that was all we were focusing on in this fight was, can Weiss win a fight? And when she did, we fucking cheered because it was like, finally, she's leveled up beyond barely weaker than Chainsaw Mook. She can do it.
Yeah, I think the funny thing with Weiss is that actually someone was in the comments in Volume 6 talking about this, but this was really long and it wasn't like an actual correction, so I didn't put it in errors and omissions. But they pointed out how the thing about Weiss is that in team fights, she actually carries. Like, she does a ton of work when they're in teams because she provides like glyphs for everyone else to jump off of, and she can like freeze people and do a lot of really good like support stuff. She's not
a bard.
Yeah,
she's useless on her own, but like when you tally it all up, yeah, it's just that like RWBY is so about solo fights for so much of its runtime that you kind of start noticing that like, Weiss, who have you beaten? Some bumblebees? I guess that's a loaded word in this fandom. You've beaten some wasps, and that's about it. Oh,
the Lancers. But yeah, I think that's really the key with Weiss. I always compare her to a D&D wizard, like a 3rd edition D&D wizard, where they start off like really weak and they can fire off like one magic missile a session, and then by the end they're just like destroying everyone with huge fireballs and shit. She just needed time to hit like the exponential part of her curve. So
not to take this accomplishment away from Weiss, who I do love dearly, but she does, her first 1v1 victory is against someone who is not invested and does not want to fight the fight, and that's actually pointed out.
Yes, that much is true.
Unfortunate.
I'm gonna take what she can get.
Literally, yes. Just like, God, just like, we just want good things for Weiss.
I want good things for Weiss. I want a real victory for her too.
It's all right. When Weiss single-handedly wipes Salem by herself, we'll all be vindicated.
She'll, when they finally take on all of like the Salem generals at once, Weiss will have like a really good moment, I'm sure.
Do they have an official like gung ho gun name? That group of bad guys, is it the Salem Generals? Because that's very funny.
I found out the other day they're called Team Witch. So
okay,
Watts, Tyrion, Cinder Hazel. Whatever. It's better than Team Seaman. Or excuse me,
mustache.
Excuse me, Cumin. We already established this. That's Watts.
Emerald and Mercury. Am I a joke to you?
I mean, yes, actually. They're not even in this volume. Okay, so other stuff. Also, I have to go on a bit of a tangent here about RWBY versus Aesops, because there was one shot that drove me fucking insane, and it's the one that's on screen right now. Hey everyone, this is Max in post-production, realizing that I didn't actually describe the scene I was talking about here. This is the shot in RWBY vs. Aesops where Harriet has her arms tied behind her back and attacks RWBY by wrapping her legs around her neck. Anyway, back to the show. Look, I don't go horny on main on this podcast. That's not what I'm here to do. That's not the point of this show. But, like, sometimes you see a shot in, like, a movie or a TV show or something, and you're like, whoever did this knew what they were fucking doing here. This is intentional.
Okay, so this is my first time, like, directly interacting with you, specifically through voice, and it's so funny that it's like, I don't go horny on main here, and you have this unique energy about you, because I follow you on Twitter and Tumblr.
Yes.
What I assume is your main of both of those.
Correct.
And you get, like, 80% of what you post is, like, wholesome girls standing next to each other, and then responding to Anons going, so I hear you're pretty horny for lesbians, and you're like, that is correct, I am. And it's like, it's not horny on main, but it's like talking to a queen on the street, and you've like, everyone who walks by just goes, heard about last night at the club, and it's like, and you're like, get out of here. But it never leaks in. It's a very unique vibe you put out. On topic, I do have one more note about the Ironwood Watts fight, which I think is the best fight in the series. I am not an animator, not a real one. So I don't know much about anything. But my biggest, here is what I think is different before and after Monty's passing, specifically with the fights. Obviously, a lot got worse. But they've never recaptured how he does aerial combat and how it jumps from ground combat to aerial combat. It's very floaty now. You can see it even really just in any small moment. They still haven't figured it out. So any fight that figures out a cool excuse to not make it aerial, those are the best fights in the show now. And I love the Watts Ironwood fight for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's a cool fight, and I wanted to see Watts do things for like 4 volumes, I guess 3. And the way that they do like the weird gravity stuff, it's like, good excuse. You guys figured it out with these blocks. It's what's that phrase that people use for shit like Vine and TikTok, where it's like
verticality,
creativity coming from restriction.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It was really, that fight had some really good elements to it. It's very, the environmental hazards in that one feel very like Mega Man to me.
Yeah.
Like with blocks flying all over the place with like gravity and shit. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, the fucking Venus thigh trap just made me lose my goddamn mind. I was like, who let this get in the show?
You know who.
I'm glad. But what the fuck? Oh my god. All right, we should move on from this.
Wait, can we call out the shot also where Yang yeets the guy straight to the ground?
Dude, oh! Yes!
That was the other, to use your term, that was the other poggers moment besides Weiss winning for us, because we were like, what the fuck? Yang, he's dead!
No. God, that shot was amazing. The shot where Yang and Blake both punch Elm at the same time mid-air. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, the cross clothesline mid-air.
Yes! Holy shit.
Both of the Bees kills were very good in the Aesops fight.
God, they were awesome. Also, this is a side note. They gave everyone weapon upgrades this volume, and some of them are more noticeable than others. My favorite is Yang's remote charges, because they get used in so many interesting ways, where it's like, that's one of those things where it's such a small detail that could have easily, you could have said, I gave your weapon some upgrades, and then you never even, bring it up. But there's, multiple instances where she uses those in really interesting ways to, give her more range or, add, take her opponents by surprise. Like when she sticks the remote charges on Blake's shadow clone and blows up Vine in the face. That was so cool. Or her, using... Also an example of, Yang, fighting smarter, which is a whole thing we've talked about a lot in past volumes, where she destroys the floor underneath Elm to keep her from using her, like, almost called it a quirk there, her semblance that lets her stick to the floor. So yeah, lots of really creative moments there, on top of just, like, the hype moments of those takedowns. Oh, man. But yeah, Aesops, the RWBY Aesops fight fucking slaps. I love it. All right. Another one of the really good fights in this volume is Maiden Bowl 2. Penny versus Winter versus Cinder. Or Penny and Winter versus Cinder. Pug, do you want to go in on this one? I feel like you have thoughts.
I would like to go in on this. Thank you so much. Maiden Bowl 2, the best fight in the entire series because it's peak sexy. Winter and Cinder, two ladies I would like to step on me in their high heels. Besides Penny, of course, being the best girl. I think there are just so many fun moments in this. Cinder thinking on her feet successfully? What? I'm always down. I'm always down for Cinder being a capable villain. I'm rooting for her.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Don't got a lot to work with in the show, but I'm trying my absolute best. Cinder
really
being...
quick one sentence tangent on that note. The running joke my friends and I had with Cinder was that she seems like a very cartoon cereal boxy kind of villain in the first couple volumes. And the joke we had for her was, today I'm feeling very evil. And then I watched Chibi and I was like, that's good. That's what they made the character.
That's literally what they do to her in Chibi. Sorry. All right, Pug, go on.
I love being interrupted. It's okay. Cinder breathing fire is really great for everyone involved, me personally. But yeah, I think this is a fun fight, and I think it's a fun fight that doesn't have the plot armor that I think a lot of the villain fights do have. Maybe that's because Team RWBY isn't involved, although I'm not saying that's the case in the Aesops fight, but there are some... I don't love it when the whole point of Cinder's Grim Arm is just there for her to be nerfed when necessary, which does happen a little bit in the Maiden Bowl fight, but it doesn't feel as absurd.
Yes, I agree on that. I think, actually, you had a whole thing about, like, because we had a whole slide in Volume 5 about the incapability or incompetence of the villains. And you had a whole point about Cinder, and, like, she has, like, a bit of an arc between, like, 3, 5, and 7. If you want to, like, elaborate on that.
Sure. I think 3 is largely a success, but I think that's more, and we don't know this is entirely speculation, feel free to disagree with me. It's not Cinder making decisions, it's just the plan going well executed, which I think is more of a testament to Salem being capable than Cinder being capable, because the moment she has to think on her feet, the moment she gets to make decisions, she just kind of, she lets Raven walk all over her, and she just makes some of the dumbest choices in the entire series. It's really hard for me to watch her very obviously get played in Volume 5, which is unfortunate because I love crunchy villains. That's my favorite part of shows in general. And it doesn't have to be Cinder, but goddamn, give me one of them. Give me one of them, give me one of them that feels scary. And I hope that is eventually Cinder. But then in this volume, I think a lot of it, because Salem is kind of leaving her on her own and leaving her to kind of prove herself, we kind of joked that it was a redemption arc, but it was a redemption arc in Salem's eyes. So redemption kind of feels like not exactly the right word. But yeah, I think she does a lot of work in this volume that doesn't feel just like her getting played. She does kind of get what she wants in the end, which is exciting for me. And I don't also have to hear about how she hurt someone's favorite cop in training.
Lol. Also, side note, Winter with her hair down.
Yeah, Winter with her hair down. Hello?
Very good, yes.
Allie, do you have thoughts on this fight?
This fight is fine for me. I honestly don't remember a lot of the actual fight part of it. The part that sticks out to me more for this fight is when Penny is like holding the Winter Maiden, and after the fact when Winter is really hurt and she's telling Weiss to leave. Those are the parts that just stick out to me more. I think there's like a nice emotional weight. I will say something that is kind of frustrating, which we do have the Aesops fight versus Team RWBY, but I feel it's a little frustrating that Team RWBY is not directly associated with like more plot important fights. Like they're not stopping Watts or Tyrion or Cinder in their fights. They're kind of fighting against the Aesops, which are not like a main villain in any way. I think that's a little bit frustrating, but I still think all the fights are at least very satisfying. So from a plot point, it's a little disappointing, but I still enjoy them as like just a fight on their own.
Yeah, normally I would super agree with you on the like, oh, I want to see the main characters be in plot important fights, but like with RWBY, there's so many characters running around, and there's like just not enough time for the right people that honestly, anytime I see them use, like Max is going off about how good the Aesops fight is, like thematically, like as a foil fight, and I was just happy to see them go, well, we got to give every one of the 4 main characters a fight at the end of the season, because we always do that, and them having a good one, even if it wasn't really like fighting villains who matter. And I think it's aged well, because fuck cops. So like, hey, that's something.
Very true.
Exactly. Yeah, I like I mean, like, to your point about like, you know, not being able to like get everyone in all the time. The thing about, I don't like using 15-minute show as a defense for RWBY in a lot of cases, but there are some instances where I think it is a valid defense of some of the writing choices, particularly the fact that like 15-minute show means you can't give every character an arc every season. Like, there are going to be a lot of characters who, like, they're on the main team and they're sort of around, but their character isn't really moving in one particular season. And I think that's okay, because 15-minute show, like, you have a limited amount of time to work with. You can't give everyone sort of the care they need to, like, move their character forward at any given time. Yeah. And I think this is
okay. You can say Nora.
We'll get to her. She has a slide.
I do want to say, because this is a long, not like episode lengthwise, but in terms of seasons and volumes, it's a long show. And one of the issues with just kind of Team RWBY not being at the forefront of these kind of season ending or plot important fights is that, I don't know, this is something I personally like lose my mind in the best way over, is when like the villains have like a specific tie to like one of like the main characters. So like there's 4 people on the Witch team and there's 4 people on the RWBY team, but pretty much Cinder and RWBY are the only ones that have like a tie to each other right now. And for a long running show, as you get later down the line, when you have those like big face off, I don't know, it's gonna be like Weiss versus Watts, which means literally nothing to me right now. And unless they start fixing that soon, it's not gonna have the emotional payoff.
I think I totally agree with you. Getting to like the Elite Four gauntlet, when each of the 4 has like each party member has their thing, is just like, it's the best. It's just a non-stop series of like, thematic catharsis, and we finally reached the end of all these arcs. And I think RWBY is beyond the point where they could possibly pull that off.
Yeah,
like, they just haven't been setting it up at all. So I'm just going like, whatever, because like this is on my mind because I'm making a parody of these videos, but every Trails of Cold Steel game tries to do that, and the end of 3, it's literally like, we have too many party members and not enough villains, and they do their best to pair them off like that, and the very last one is like, oh, you're my brother who betrayed me. It's like, oh, I'm trying to fight corruption and you're the heart of that. And then there's just like the Bard character's just like, I'm here and I don't have anyone else to fight, so I guess we're fighting. And I imagine that's going to be the energy for the end game of RWBY.
Yeah.
It'll be like Yang versus Hazel, and they'll be like, I guess we're the bruisers of our respective crews. And they'll be like, yeah.
I mean, that's far enough.
We get dumb when we're angry. we're foils or something. Punch.
It's far enough off in the future that they may do something like, they may not go down that specific direction. I mean, it's interesting because Team Witch, like, I mean, Watts' thing is actually against Ironwood, which is why, part of why the Watts-Ironwood fight is cool, because that is personal. And Hazel's whole thing is against Ozpin, but we've already discussed why Hazel just doesn't work in general.
Hazel's so bad.
Hazel's so bad. We don't need to retread that ground. But yeah, that's far enough off in the future that I feel like, who fucking knows, man? They could do whatever they want. Maria, other than Maiden Penny, Maiden Penny, Maiden Penny, anything jump out to you about this fight?
I also second hair down Winter, of course. Yeah, I had a fun time. I thought it was a good fight. I agree with everything everyone said.
Yeah. Women who can step on me. Good shit.
Yes.
Good shit. Damn it. Okay, we're good. Okay, another element of this volume I thought was done really well is that, we're in Atlas, we're in Weiss's home turf, we're spending a little more time with her and her family than we had in past volumes. We got, like, a little bit of sort of the Schnee family drama in Volume 4, but I think it's done a lot, they give it a lot more time, and I think it's done a lot better in Volume 7. Pug, we were talking about this the other night. Do you want to start on this?
Sure. So I think the part that stands out to me the most is actually the treatment of Whitley, who is a character I don't like. But I think the conversation between Weiss and her mom regarding Whitley, like, don't forget your brother, and then Weiss is like, oh, he wants nothing to do with me, is kind of recognizing that the way Whitley is a response to trauma, and is kind of him processing the events in his own way. And obviously it's different from the way that Winter is doing it, and it's different from the way Weiss is doing it. And maybe it's not even in a way that we like, or that we kind of can find relatable, but I think it takes a lot of balls for a show to be able to write this kind of character and recognize that as a trauma response and actually acknowledge it. People on the internet love to judge characters for the validity of their trauma response, and I just find this to be a particularly nuanced version of it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that always blows my mind about RWBY is how hard they swing between the writing being, like, almost insultingly bad, and them, like, nailing the nuance of subjects that, like, even, like actual good shows still manage to fuck up. And the thing that they consistently do a good job with is, like, trauma and what that does to people, in the sense that I've talked before about how, like, people, like, with, like, I've seen people, like, with PTSD who, like, relate really heavily to Yang and what happened to her, like, in Volume 4. And I've seen people talk about how, like, the way that Blake responds to Adam, and how, like, she sort of is trying to, like, come back from being in this abusive relationship, a lot of people found really strong and really relatable. And then Weiss and her family are the same way, where there is a degree of subtlety and nuance here that, like, I would never expect from a show like this, but it's there, and it actually works really well to convey, like, what kind of environment this is. Another line that really stuck out to me is when Jacques shows up on, like, the helipad after they leave the mine, and he starts talking to Weiss, and he says, like, your mother is so worried about you, like, you know how she gets. At, like, just that little bit of, like, basically just, like, pitting the members of this family against each other to sort of manipulate them into the position he wants them in is so, like, it's like just this one line, but it speaks so much about, like, how he operates and what it was like growing up, what it must have been like growing up under him. And I was just really impressed with the attention and the care they put into this.
I also fucking love right after that scene with Jacques, after he leaves, Winter's truck pulls up and her just kind of, like, peering out to make sure that he's gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it nuanced?
Go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead, you're good.
I was just going to say, I'm going to go on record and say I think this is the best acted scene in the entire show. This and also Jean at Pyrrha's statue. I thought those are like the two. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
acting. And I want to give props to, I don't know the VA's names for Team RWBY, but a lot of them, I think maybe all of them, didn't start with professional acting backgrounds. They were just Rooster Teeth employees. I think Weiss has improved the most from the start. Not to say she was the worst at the start. I think she's done the best job, and I really respect her performance this volume.
Yeah, definitely. There was, I think the voice actors, like in general, like you said, because they were all just like Rooster Teeth. They were like Rooster Teeth employees and like friends and like girlfriends of people who worked on the show. They have improved like really dramatically since they started. And yeah, I agree with you there. Sorry, Pug, were you saying something earlier?
Oh yeah, kind of going off Winter coming out of the truck and then hiding. Not only are these like responses to abuse or trauma nuanced, but they're all different. And I don't know that it particularly begrudges anyone for having a reaction that maybe is contrarian to someone else's. Like, I think there's some friction between Weiss and her mom, but I don't think that her mom is demonized in any way. And I think there's some contrast between Weiss and Whitley. And yeah, okay, Whitley is a little shit, but I think it really does bring it back with this acknowledgement from the mom. And I don't know, I can't say enough about how much I appreciate that from a writing perspective.
Yeah, and like when we see the mom, like, I mean, obviously she's not coping with all this well, but it's not, yeah, it's like you said, it's not like they're demonizing her. You do feel bad, you feel for her on some level, and like she does help out in this way in that she like sets up those security cameras that lets Weiss arrest Jacques, which is one of my favorite moments in this volume.
It's good. It's interesting because like Jacques, I'm a huge sucker for this particular plot of like asshole rich dad broken family. I think it's always, I was gonna say fun, which is wrong, but I like seeing it,
right?
Because I think it's interesting. And I don't think Jacques is a particularly interesting or well written example. He's not bad. He's just pretty by the numbers. But I was really impressed with this plot because by the end of it, I actually came out thinking all three, or I guess four, I forgot Winter exists. All four of the other members of the family were like written in a really good way in how they reacted to it. It was like, wow, Jacques is a fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles bad guy, but the rest of you are reacting to him like humans. And I can't believe you made me come out of this feeling anything but contempt for Whitley, honestly. So props.
Yeah. It's a lot to be said for that. Allie, do you have thoughts on this whole thing?
Not more than has already been said. I think, again, that, yeah, I totally agree. The scene with Weiss and her mom is just so well done. I like the way it's, like, framed, the camera, too, where they're so, like, far apart from each other at the start, and they get, like, physically closer to each other. I love the line when her mom asks if she's staying, and Weiss says no, and her mom says good, and it's just like, I think the dialogue is so well done. I totally agree. I completely hated Whitley from like the start when they introduced him, but I can't believe they like turned it around with like literally like 2 lines, and it's just like, you know what? You're right. She should be supporting her brother.
And for like, I don't know why you'd watch this podcast before watching Volume 7, if there's anyone who does that, but for context on the summary of how I felt on Whitley was after his first appearance being like, hello, sister. My friend group's nickname for him was Incest Brother because we were so disgusted by the everything about him that we're just like, get out of here, Incest Brother. And at the end of Volume 7, we were like, you know what? Maybe we misjudged Incest Brother, but we're not going to stop calling him that.
It's like how Jean is still in Ruby's scroll as Vomit Boy. Once you got the nickname, you can't change the nickname. But yeah, I also, side note, since I didn't point this out in an earlier slide, Volume 7, so RWBY, part of the story of RWBY is them sort of refining the production process as they've been making the show. And
no way.
Well, Volume 7, one of the big jumps they made, in addition to bringing on some like industry people to refine their animation process, was they brought on 2 extra writers to help out Miles and Carrie, who I think,
thank God,
who I think actually wrote like half or more of these episodes. They have like the written by credit. Eddie Rivas and Kiersey Burkhart. I forget how her name is pronounced, but they add a lot, I think. Obviously, like, I don't know, like, how much of each, like, episode's dialogue and, like, writing you can attribute to one writer or another, but I think just having those extra voices in there and having some more perspective, especially because, like, Miles and Carrie have been going it alone writing for so long now, I think goes a huge way to adding a little extra depth. And that's probably why, like, for example, this volume has so much more showing, not telling, when that was something that was completely absent before now. All right. There's a few other smaller points that I didn't think could get whole slides. First of all, this new OP slaps silly. It's so good. I normally am not a huge fan of the RWBY music, and I normally skip the OP when I'm watching. Volume 7 is the only one where I watch the OP all the way through every single time, because it's great.
Yeah, I didn't skip it either, and I'm like a notorious RWBY music hater. Like, the soundtrack was good. I will say, I know everyone was freaking out over Ironwood versus Watts, and I do agree it's a really good fight, but that's an example for me where the butt rock soundtrack kind of kills it. But that's the only example of the volume.
I'm friends with the vocalist.
When Caleb Hiles,
sorry.
when Caleb Hiles like started singing, I lost my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I've made lots of jokes about, like, yeah, it's butt rock for people who like musicals, but it can be used well. I also...
That's such a good description!
That's what it is, man. I also think the other good example, I actually really like the music in the RWBY versus Aesops fight. I thought, like, yes, it's more butt rock, but it like, I think it fits the mood really well. That's one of the better songs off the soundtrack, I think. Yeah, the Volume 7 soundtrack is just, like, unusually good, I'd say. Other stuff. Oh, so I don't want to go into this too much because I think this is a whole... I didn't think this deserved a discourse slide because I'm just fucking sick of it. But Crow...
It goes beyond RWBY.
Yeah, Crow in volumes 3 through 6 was voiced by Vince Lasagna, infamous anime voice acting pariah now. And he was let go after volume 6 because of why he was let go from everything else. So they got Jason Liebrecht on instead. And Jason Liebrecht nailed it as Crow.
He did such a good job.
Yeah, I could like hardly tell, and it was great.
I said this on the PowerPoint. Like, I can tell it's a different voice actor, but like I imagine they were gonna do this with Crow either way. But the fact that this season was the I'm not gonna drink anymore, I'm gonna sober up season really is a good way to dovetail a new VA in and kind of hide it. And
yeah.
like the slight differences in his performance, because he's a different human, come across as what Crow is like when he's sober. And that's what Crow's gonna be from now on. So it's great. It was very smart. And he did a great job. I love Jason Liebrecht. He's so good.
It's very hopeful that you think Crow isn't going to start drinking again.
Oh.
Well, nothing traumatic's happened to him recently, so it should be fine.
Let one good thing happen to Crow. Oh, God. All right, we'll get into that later. But yeah, Jason Liebrecht knocked it out of the park. I mean, they gave Crow, like, some of his, I think, his most emotional moments yet this volume. So, to, like, come in to a character who had already been established for 3 seasons, and you're getting, like, his most intense material as, like, your first season with the character. Like, yeah, very, very good work. Also related to that whole arc he had this volume where he, like, tries to quit drinking, I actually thought that was set up really well in the sense that, like, you saw him at his most drunk in volume 6, and that was when he sort of had this moment with RWBY where RWBY had to basically tell him to his face that he was being a cynical asshole, and he was, like, hampering, or, like, not hampering, but he was, like, getting in the way of the team by, like, just being all doom and gloom all the time. And so I think having him come out of that being like, you know what, maybe I should cut back on the booze a bit, and have that be like how he goes into 7, I think was actually a really cool detail. That they like, it was like, it gets like a little obvious at times, but you know, what is RWBY if not a show that puts everything in your face? Other strong moments, Atlas actually has really good world building, which is an element that RWBY is, again, lacking in a lot of places.
Atlas is definitely the prettiest location we've been to. It's very cool. It's also the most like unique fantasy world. I love that they were like, yes, having a city in the sky will drop the temperature by about 65 degrees. So here is a reason we're able to live here. And then that is actively part of the plot when it gets sabotaged. I thought that was really clever.
Also, the fact that they're like up in the Arctic, that's also like kind of a key element there.
Well,
Pug, you had did you have thoughts on this? Like that first episode when they fly into Mantle thought was particularly effective.
I saw some complaint about them landing in Mantle added unnecessary time, where if they had just landed in Atlas, the result would have been very similar. And I don't know if I agree with that criticism, because I think landing in Mantle and seeing what Mantle is like is another moment where RWBY actually does pull off the show don't tell kind of adage. Because if they had just landed in Atlas and be like, yeah, it's really bad in Mantle, it would have been like, yeah, faunus discrimination is like a systematic problem, but shrug emoji. So
yes.
I actually like that we took some time to kind of see what's going on in Mantle, because the sympathy for the people that live there is a huge part of kind of the entire season. And I'm glad that we actually did get a taste of it instead of them just telling us that's how we should feel about it.
Yeah, and like actually getting to see all the like Big Brother is watching you shit that Ironwood is doing down there.
He's done nothing wrong.
Oh, we'll get into that. Other fun stuff, there's a training montage. Who doesn't love a training montage?
Loud cough.
Okay. Wait, was this Maria? Were you the one who added this to the planning doc?
Yeah, I just liked it. I thought it was fun. I liked the soundtrack with it too. I liked the narration. I liked how it was set up.
Yeah, I thought, Brand New Day, again, the soundtrack was like really strong this volume, and that was like a good example of that. Everyone has new outfits this volume, some of which definitely hit better than others, admittedly. But I'm a big fan of a lot of them. Particularly Cinder's new outfit just makes me go feral.
I like it. I do. Now when I look at it, though, I do immediately remember it was either a tweet or a Tumblr post I saw when it was like Cinder and some other design where they like had the exploded view of all the different layers.
Yeah.
And the caption was just, "These bitches really gotta get butt naked if they need to pee."
That was a fucking Sardeska tweet, because they were talking about Cinder and Blake, because Blake has the cat suit. Yeah, Blake vacuum sealing her titties into that cat suit is like still extremely funny to me. Doesn't look bad, it's just amusing. What else was there? Oh, also, speaking of Blake, Blake and Yang don't get a ton of screen time this volume after being like basically the focus in the last one for like half of it. Which again, I think is fine, because 15-minute show, you can't give everyone a full arc every season. But even with that, even with the minimal screen time, we still got some bonus Bumblebee hours. Pug, you had thoughts on this, if I recall correctly.
I have thoughts on this, and I don't go here, so I feel a little weird being the one bringing this up, but I actually would make a case that Volume 7 is the most bees volume, and the reason for that is a lot of the bees vibes in Volume 7 is interactions they're having together, which is left to the interpretation of the audience, but a lot of the bees moments in Volume 7 are actually like pointed out by other characters, specifically when Meryl kind of mentions them branching out a little bit together and that very quickly being shut down. But more importantly, when Nora says, two people who've gone through that much together, I think there's more going on. The only sort of equivalent we have in Volume 6 is, I guess, queer ally Adam, which I think is a really shitty argument. So
homophobic ally Adam Taurus, because he says, yeah. What does she even see in you?
So I think Volume 7 being other characters in the cast noticing something going on between them makes it a canonically stronger argument as opposed to like them making eyes at each other and people leaving that up for interpretation. I
also agree deep. Like this is by far, like I got a ton of shit in my RWBY video because I made a joke that like Bumblebee was a weird ship that had almost nothing to it for about 4.5 seasons.
Yeah, I was pissed about that line in the video.
Yeah, I bet you were. And I asked other people, I was like, hey, you're RWBY neutral. Watch this with me. What do you think? And they were like, no, you're right. And then I got to, and I was like 6. And I was like, okay, that's fine. That's not bad. We're going to do a thing with this. And then in 7, I was like, they're a couple now. They're interacting like people who like each other instead of teammates who occasionally talk. And then whenever people see them next to each other, they can make an AMV out of it. And then the music can do the storytelling. But they've got all these cute little moments. It's like, oh, now this works. So volume 7 for me is all right, I'm now on board with Bumblebee because the text supports it.
Yeah, I could make a whole case for bees being heavily led up to in 2 through 5, but we don't have time to get into that now, do we?
Yeah, I don't disagree that it's probably there, and it was probably at some level of an intention, but I think had they been writing them like they wrote them in 7, I would have been on board by volume 1. That's what I'm saying.
I gotcha. Couple other fun stuff. So Nora, which we have a whole slide complaining about this. One thing I do like about Nora this volume, aside from her new character design, making her look like a trans rights Kingdom Hearts character, is that she's like the unofficial like Antifa president this volume because she's like the most vocal critic of Ironwood. And I have seen some people make the case that, like, the people who don't like RWBY, basically, or think that RWBY is going to shit or whatever, they said, like, Nora was the canary in the coal mine in the sense that she feels out of place in the show now, and that's not because it's not because they stopped writing Nora well, it's because the show stopped fitting her. Like, the idea being that she's too, like, genky and happy-go-lucky for modern RWBY that's a lot darker than the original, like, first couple of volumes. And I do agree that, like, as much as I love Nora, she is one note, and it was necessary that they give her a little more to work with at some point. And I think this is sort of the beginning of that. And I think having her be, like, you know, giving her a really strong moral compass and being the most willing to say, like, it's nice because, like, she already doesn't have much of a filter. So having her be the one to be like, no, fuck you, this is wrong. Like, you can't just, like, you know, take away people's rights like this, I thought was like a nice little addition to her character.
Yeah, it rounds her out a bit.
Cool. And then finally, who else had like a like minor freak out about the like extremely long, weirdly tender yes, the very long hug between Ironwood and Crow.
So good to see you. That was
like even like rolls his eyes.
Sorry, Maria, what was that?
But Crow even like rolls his eyes too at like how long Ironwood is hugging him.
Right? Pug.
I remember go ahead, Pug, sorry.
Oh, Allie, go ahead.
Well, it's just like a small thing, but I remember one of the podcasts you were talking about, like how Ironwood and Glinda seem to have a thing. I'm just like, does Ironwood just like have a thing with literally everyone from like the Ozpin circle? Like
Ironwood is the Yang of Ozpin.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love that. Yeah, I think it's volume 6 that opens up with Crow writing a letter to Iron Daddy, and then volume 7 has this really strange hug that kind of says Iron Crow writes. Again, I don't go there, but I did see this extremely cursed post where somebody made a fan cam of Ironwood's ass, and then the comment was, "Damn, now I see why Iron Daddy has 2 seats on the council. And if I have to suffer hearing that, you all have to suffer hearing that." That's great.
Oh, I love shitposter RWBY Twitter. It's great. All right, we gotta talk about some bad things, because there was some stuff this volume that didn't work, as is always the case. And unlike volume 6, we're not all hive mind bee stands, so we have a few more complaints this time around. first of all, heterosexuality. It's not good. Ren and Nora kiss this volume, and good for the people who ship that. I'm happy for you, but how these two are written this volume, I feel like falls flat on multiple occasions. Yes, go off.
God, so earlier I mentioned the Robin thing where I was like, great, Robin's done. Oh no, this is RWBY. Renora might be the most example of that I'm just consistently baffled by, where like, for me, Volume 4, which I don't really like at all upon a rewatch, I think it's it's my least favorite, maybe. That's not true, 5 exists. But from a what happens standpoint, it's my least favorite. And all of this time is dedicated to Ren's backstory, and then he and Nora have that like, oh, are they finally a couple moment? And then they like kind of just are, and like any reasonable viewer would assume at this point, given all the shit they've said to each other, that like, yeah, they just are. And they're not important, so we can just go, got it, thumbs up. Maybe we can see them holding hands in the background. Maybe they can say cutesy couple shit like Bumblebee does now in Volume 7. But I was so fucking baffled that they were like, how are we going to write that? Like, you know who needs more focus? Renora. And you know that thing that writers do sometimes where at the end of like a first movie in a series, the love interest and the main character will get together. And then because nobody knows how to write actual couples just being happy together, the start of the next movie is like, we broke up during the time skip. It's like, fuck off. Just like learn how to write a happy couple.
It's like Spider-Man making a deal with the devil to get out of his marriage. Allie, do you have strong thoughts on this?
Yeah, it feels very much like shoujo manga, like BS, where it's like, we're a couple, but like, problems have to come up, or like we don't have a show. But like you said, Jill, it's like, why do they really need to make Renora a center focus? Except I guess they're trying to give Nora kind of more of a character arc, but they don't need to like bring Ren into it. They don't need to like make Ren such a stick in the mud. There's a part where he's like, there's a part where Ironwood's like, go do this thing. And all the Aesops are like, yes, sir. And Ren goes like, yes, sir. And I was like, oh my god, he's becoming a cop. That's his arc for this volume. No. And I was like, why is this happening?
That Renora's arc is that is that Nora becomes more woke while Ren takes the red pill, and we just have to sit there and watch. It's just wild. Why would you focus on this like mostly soft, like just like whatever, they're obviously going to be couple freebie ship, and why would you like let's sully this, and then instead of focusing on like, and I don't even like Bumblebee that much, instead of focusing on like, hey, we have more screen time, let's give it to our cute new couple. Why would you take that and go, I hate Renora, let's ruin it?
I mean, I think it comes back to like kind of what you said, Allie, about like, oh, we have a relationship, we have to have problems now. I think part of it is that, and I've actually felt this way for a while, is that Ren and Nora always felt pretty thin to me as characters, even though they are part of the main cast and they are just sort of always around. And I think the writers were like, we want to give them more to work with here. We want to add some additional depth to them, because sure, they got a backstory, but we got like only a little bit to work with there. It was very self-contained, and that was actually one of my main criticisms with Volume 4, was how sort of like, okay, it's here and now it's gone. It doesn't feel super impactful in that way. But yeah. I think it was on some level a smart idea of like, hey, these characters are around literally all the time. We should like develop them a bit. But I think the way it was done, as you guys have said, is kind of frustrating in that, like, you know, we could have just been happy with them as a couple before. Do we really need to have them like, do we really need to have like Ren participating in No Nora November and like throwing a wrench into all of this for seemingly no reason and like adding this extra element to their characters? I'm kind of the opinion, and this is coming back to something I said earlier, that Ren and Nora this volume are basically the first half of an arc that we won't see a resolution to until 8. I think this was supposed to be setting up for something. Now, if I'm wrong, this just flat out sucks. But I think there is a possibility that they could have, like, this is just creating tension that has to be addressed later, but because we don't get the resolution, it just feels weird and frustrating.
Yeah, it's just such a weird set of characters to devote more focus to, but like, ain't that just the show, really?
That's this is the problem with taking inspiration from like shonen battle manga, is that the downfall of every shonen battle manga is too many fucking characters. Cough cough Naruto, cough cough BNHA. So like
Cough cough One Piece.
Yep. So it's like, if you're gonna, you inherit the like the good parts and the bad parts. Maria, did you have like a super strong reaction to this?
I think everything pretty much that I had problems with had been said. I'm like, why would you do that to Ren? Why now? Why are we like giving them tension after, especially like, you had them freaking kiss. We waited like 7 seasons for Nora kiss, and then they're like, nah, really?
Yeah. Also, this has me concerned for like, is it a rule in this show that when a couple kisses, something really terrible has to happen right afterwards?
I don't know.
Because that happened with, because Pyrrha kissed Jean right before she got turned into dust. So I'm wondering, like, whenever they let the bees kiss, what horrific tragedy will ensue immediately afterwards?
See, that's you didn't watch the World of Remnant, where they explain that it's tricky to be straight in this universe, because if you are, you will eventually be miserable and die immediately afterwards. It's so hard to have a kid.
Yeah,
the only couples we've seen have been lesbians.
That would make sense, yeah. Pug, you have hot takes on Nora, if I recall correctly.
I really agree with what Jello said about, one day television writers will learn how to write characters and happy relationships, but today is not that day. But I'm so torn about this, because I want good things for Nora, and the thing that for some fucking reason she wants is Ren. So in theory, I want to support Ren Nora, but the problem with that is Nora gets like a glimmer of character development, dare I say, a glimmer of a little bit of depth, and somehow the show turns it on its head and makes it about Ren reacting negatively to that, which is so absurd after making me sit through the shit that they made me sit through in Volume 4, where it was just all about, even though it was a quote-unquote shared backstory, it's all about Ren all the time, and we've learned very little about Nora. And at this point, I'm just frustrated with it, because I don't think they have a lot of chemistry. I just think Nora likes this person that maybe doesn't like her back in the same way, and I'm just really fucking tired of it.
That is an entirely fair take. I was really on board with Ren and Nora at first, because like way years ago, because I wasn't a huge fan of, honestly, it took me a while to like anyone on Team RWBY. I don't think they found their footing until season 3 in that regard for me, but I liked Juniper a lot. And I liked that Ren and Nora were very, very side characters, and the dynamic seemed to be Nora is a lunatic, and Ren is the anchor that keeps this kite on the earth, and they have a cute dynamic. And for some reason, it's like, as the show's gotten more serious, instead of keeping them as that fun dynamic where obviously Ruby and John could have been the serious characters from then on, I guess everyone in that group is at least a little comic relief, and that's kind of a problem, isn't it? They were like, let's round out Nora. And they were like, well, who in this totalitarian Sky City would be against the Antifa girl? I know, her foil can be Ren. Like, what a weird take for that to be.
But yeah.
Nora has one singular aspect of her character that is not inherently tied to Ren. That's all I'm asking for.
Just give us something, fam. Just give us something. But yeah, this was weird and forced, and it's not good. Okay. It's time for people to get angry. I think one of the scenes that I saw the strongest reactions to from this whole fucking volume, to the point where it almost overshadowed a lot of the other stuff happening around the same time, was the fight between Crow, Clover, and Tyrion, where Clover ends up dying, and people had a lot of hot takes on this. I have to sort of read the room first to see where everyone is at on this one before we get into it. So, Allie, how do you feel about this scene?
I I'm kind of holding off total judgment because I'm curious what it means in terms of like how Crow develops in the next season, which we can't know yet. I think it is like really strange. We're talking about the actual ship later, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think, well, the actual fight was just really frustrating because I get that like Clover has orders to bring Crow in, but Crow could just like not be like, because it's Tyrion and Crow eventually just against Clover, and I don't see why Crow is so like, I'm just gonna beat Clover up, because it's just one of those things. It's like, just don't just fight Tyrion first, because he's obviously the person that is just so evil. And it does feel like, I don't know, like a CinemaSins thing slightly, where you're like, oh, why don't they just fight Tyrion instead and then fight each other? But it does feel like that, because, I mean, Clover and Crow have a relationship with each other, not necessarily romantic, but they do have, like, a connection to each other, and it's, even though Clover is a cop, it is like, come on, dude, you still have, like, emotions for this person, and, like, why would you decide to fight him over this person that is, like, a deranged lunatic?
Maria?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Allie said. I am waiting to hold off judgment because I want to see where they take it with Crow. But so there was I got to a certain point in season 7 where my dumb ass was completely ready for Clover to like abandon Ironwood and team up with Crow because they're friends and they're foils, and we had all these hints. And then that did not happen. The exact opposite happened, and I was fucking pissed. Like, I was just like, ugh. I was so mad the first time. It just felt really, like, almost cheap. I'm like, really, you did all this stuff, and then you just gotta kill him for like Crow character development. And yeah, I'm still holding off. And then, like, the Tyrion thing is just. Clover being a cop, I had a very visceral reaction to it my first time around.
Brendan?
Also, for the love of God, just let Crow have one nice thing, please.
Yes.
He's doing so well.
Give him one good day. Brendan?
My watch group's big takeaway was that Clover was beyond the dumbest character in the show for his calls in this fight. I don't recall feeling like Crow was also fucking up, but again, it's been a year, and he probably also fucked up. But Clover especially, at that point, I was just like, oh, like the second this fight started, I went, okay, Clover's dead. And then it was like, I'm gonna fight you first before Tyrion. I was like, okay. And thematically, he deserves it then. So I was more mad at that flavor of writing more than they killed boyfriend. Also, this slide says a lot of people hate Tyrion. I did not know that was a take. Tyrion's one of my favorite characters, actually.
Well, he's divisive. It's because he's like, okay, Tyrion is like, and this is an archetype you see in like so many shows, the deranged lunatic who just loves doing violence and killing people, you know? And like some people just really hate that archetype, so there's gonna be like...
Yeah, I feel like he's a great example of like a not well developed villain in RWBY, which I don't have a lot.
It's take it or leave it, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. Not that this is what we're focusing on, but I like him specifically because he's like the I don't give a shit crazy guy who makes all the other characters go, why are we on this team? And I always find that very amusing. Also, Josh Greeley does a beautiful job as Tyrion.
Oh yeah, they do a great job as Tyrion. Pug, can you contain your laughter long enough to give thoughts on this?
Yeah, so remember when Crow killed Clover with his bare hands? Thanks.
I literally don't, but I believe
he does break his aura with his bare hands.
So as someone who's never seen Gurren Lagann past episode 8, I think after Crow made this decision to work with Tyrion, anything he gets after that is entirely on him, and he deserves all of it. I have no sympathy for him after he makes this very stupid decision.
I do not have that take. I think, like, okay, I get why so many people got mad at this fight. I'm gonna defend this fight a little bit. because I think that, I mean, we already touched on this a little bit about, Clover being a cop, but I think that really is, like, what they were trying to go for here, in the sense that, like, okay, do I want to pull this one out? Like, okay, who here is familiar with Les Miserables?
What the hell?
Very vaguely.
I've
seen the movie. I've seen the movie, which I've been told is not the right way to experience that musical.
So,
no, you're fine.
So, here's the thing, right? Like Javert in Les Mis, like, what is his downfall? Like, what ultimately, like, drives him to the point of, like, where what is his fatal flaw as a character?
It is that he is a stupid cop who, a man who is allegedly on paper a criminal, keeps doing nice things, and Javert can't reconcile that. He just goes, well, I instead of developing from this, I will jump off a bridge.
Pug, does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think his stubbornness kind of pulls him through, and then once he's realized that his stubbornness is what betrayed him, he just can't live with himself. I think it's a little more of an internal realization.
Yeah, you described that a lot nicer than I did.
Yeah, I mean,
Norm
Lewis singing Stars, it's beautiful.
So obviously this is not quite the same situation, but, like, a key part of, like, Javert's issue is that he's, like, that sense of stubbornness and devotion to, like, the law, capital T, capital L, is, like, it's like he's a cop who's, like, too good at being a cop for his own good. Like, he's enforcing the law to the point where it doesn't actually make sense anymore. Like, that motherfucker would give you a ticket for jaywalking. Like, come on, man.
It's lawful neutral is actually evil.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, exactly. And I think that's what they were trying to do with Clover, in the sense that, like, and I think they actually set this up well in the very first episode, where the Aesops see them, help defend the city, but then proceed to arrest them without asking any questions about who they are, or why they're here, or, like, they don't need any context. It's like, oh, they arrested them for a fucking parking violation. They landed a ship without permissions, and that's what they were being taken in for. So I think they set up that, like, Clover, for all of his friendliness with Crow, and we'll get into that a bit more later, is devoted to Ironwood to the point where it's like, yeah, he'll make a stupid, irrational decision like this because you gotta trust the general. Like, that's what it's all about. In his mind, like, it's literally that post about, like, how, like, oh, if I was a villain if I was the Joker, like, I'd just get a restraining order against Batman because he can't break the law. Like, what's he gonna do, right? It's like so in his mind, it's like, he's supposed to arrest Tyrion, he's supposed to arrest Crow. Like, as far as he's concerned, they are equal priorities. And it doesn't make sense for him to, like, team up with Crow for that reason. And that's why he ultimately has to die.
Yeah, I don't specifically remember the moment of death. It is more than possible. It's very, Crow, what the fuck are you doing? Because Crow killing him with his bare hands sounds so funny. But because it's ridiculous. But I remember not what happened, but I remember my feelings being, Clover made unbelievably bad decisions. Crow made bad decisions, but, like, I remember the stakes being that if Team RWBY and their allies got captured, they were essentially fucked, and everyone in town was going to die.
I mean, yeah, basically.
At least that was... Yeah, so I understand that Crow is like, I literally have to... Like, there are so many lives on the line right now, and for some reason, you are the dumbest idiot. I have to fight back in this manner. I don't remember the moment of death. It could be really bad, but up until that point, I remember being like, I see where Crow's coming from. Meanwhile, Tyrion's just having a grand old time.
Yes, Tyrion is feeling his oats.
I don't know that I've ever fundamentally disagreed with Max Moore on the podcast ever before. Because I think it's so unfair to say that Clover is making the bad decision when Clover is like in the fight is just fighting to disarm Crow, and Crow is coming at Clover with a known deranged murderer. So, like, yes, Clover's loyalty at the end of the day is to Ironwood, and he hasn't known Crow long enough to break that loyalty, and I don't know that I consider that a character flaw. And I also think the guy that's like just trying to like live through the fight and the guy that has made the decision to team up with the murderer, I don't think those decisions are the same weight.
I'm gonna watch this on ×2 speed again.
Like, maybe this could have been resolved with a little bit more dialogue, but yeah, I don't think putting the blame on Clover being like, I am lawful to a fault is fair, because I feel like he was put in a really hard decision, and it was a really hard situation, and at the end of the day, his loyalty is to Ironwood, and that, like, logically made sense for him to fall back on, especially when Crow is coming at him with Tyrion. Why would you trust that person in that situation? And all he does is, like, literally just get Crow's weapon away from him, and Crow breaks his aura. Like, those are not the same.
Allie, do you have thoughts on these takes?
Yeah, both of them are definitely at fault to some degree. I don't know. The way it played out, I don't think it was, like, the most unsatisfied, because it was weird, and we'll talk about this a little later, I think, too, but it's interesting to me, like, what kind of influence Clover is going to have on Crow, and that, like, it was cut short so quickly, also, because, to me, Clover died before he had any, like, real impact on, like, Crow's character. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have any super strong opinions either way on these.
I just re-skimmed through it. So the first, this is probably obvious to you guys because I think you watched it a lot more recent than me. The first half of the fight is exclusively Crow going for Tyrion, Clover standing there, and then stopping him from attacking Tyrion, which is literally insane.
Yes.
And there's about 2.5 minutes of that, maybe 2 minutes. And then Crow and Tyrion kind of look at each other. Tyrion doesn't give a fuck because he's chaotic evil.
Yeah.
And Crow's just like, I guess I have to put Clover away for a minute. And inexplicably, Crow is using his sword for most of that fight. And I think that is dumb. I have to imagine what they were going for there was just like, this'll look cooler in motion, which was a dumb idea, and it should have been Crow being like non-lethal, and they should have had at least one more moment of Tyrion like about to attack Clover, and then Crow like knocking Clover out of the way or something so he doesn't get lethally hit by a stinger, you know, something that makes sense. They didn't do that, and that was very stupid. I still think thematically, like speaking from an emotionless storytelling robot standpoint, Clover completely deserves to die because he stops Crow in the first half, and then out loud Crow's like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Here is my reason I am about to die, and it's very dumb." And then he dies, and it's like, I mean, yeah, like if you give a speech about going like, "Dude, don't drink the rat poison. I have drunk rat poison for years." And then you drink the rat poison. I don't feel bad that you drank the rat poison.
I think the nature of this fight is that, here's the thing. I can write out the arc on paper and explain why it works, and you reading it can be like, yes, that sounds good. But the problem is that this fight has, 20 different things you can cinema sins out to make it unsatisfying and hard to watch, and I think that is the core of the issue here. Because
that's very fair. I think it was a disconnect between the writing and the storyboarding for the fight.
We can ignore a certain degree of those little ding moments, but when you have too many of them back to back, they do become an actual problem. Like you said, creating a disconnect.
I actually like the fight. I just sort of blame Crow entirely.
Yeah, there was actually some good choreography there. I liked a lot of it.
Yeah, I just like watching Tyrion fuck shit up, so.
I never thought you could make a fishing rod an interesting weapon, but goddamn, they did it. RWBY, man.
Have you ever seen Hunter x Hunter?
No, but I should.
No, you shouldn't. But go on.
Got him! We got some other random grievances before we move on to discourse. They devote a few episodes this volume to an election arc, which I think was sort of universally received with a resounding meh. I don't know if anyone else has anything to say on that. I thought it was like, it wasn't like bad the way that like the Faunus plot line is bad, where it's like, just found out about racism, damn, this shit sucks, man. But, you know, wasn't great.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. I think the problem was you could kind of, you knew the plot from like if you've ever seen anything similar, it was just like, yeah, we know what's going down.
It's telegraphed
and then you had to,
too
watch
hard.
Characters set up themselves so they could be knocked down like bottles in the exact way you knew was going to happen. It's like, well, yeah, that's what happens in this kind of story. And it you know, it wasn't too fun. There wasn't any fun twist. Maybe if they'd added some more like, I don't know, espionage-y shit like in the middle of the election instead of all the action being kind of at the climax and then afterwards. But I don't know. I don't really know how I'd fix that. It was fine.
It's very straightforward, basically.
Yeah.
A little too straightforward. Okay, we touched a bit about like the themes in this volume of like transparency and honesty and how like Team RWBY, but like RWBY specifically, spends a lot of time hiding shit from Ironwood. I mean, actually, like, Brandon, you talked about this earlier and more or less gave your spiel, unless there's like more you want to say on this one.
I don't remember enough in detail to have anything more meaningful to contribute, so someone else should talk.
Yeah, I don't know if other people have thoughts on this. I disagree with this point, but if other people also were frustrated by that, feel free.
Okay. I can try my best. I was a little frustrated by volume, is it 6? Where they figure out that Jin says there is no way to beat Salem, and
right.
Everyone is very mad at Oz about that, which like sucks, but I thought was dumb because like, wouldn't you still want to try, you know? Like, I don't know. I've never thought anything Oz has done has been that bad given what he's gone through, but that's a whole nother discussion.
We more or less came to that conclusion on the 6 podcast, so you're with us there.
Cool. So I remember everyone being disproportionately mad at Oz to the point he took his ball and went home about the fact he had been lying out of omission. And I remember RWBY being the most understanding about it, but like still pissed off. And then everyone was like, yes, that is bad. And then you kick off volume 7 by going, hello, I am Ironwood, a man who until the end of this makes mostly pretty good decisions and probably wouldn't have had to make the dumb decisions had he known what was going on. And they walk up and RWBY's like, hey, here's all what we know. And he's like, do you know anything about this? And I don't remember what it was, but I remember it being pivotal and there being no reason for her not to tell him.
It was the lamp. It was RWBY lying about saying like, the lamp is out of wishes. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Also, it really kicks off with she interrupts Oscar explaining what happened and why Oz is hiding. She blames it on the train wreck. And then she lies about the lamp. So she actually steals the conversation from Oscar to answer for everybody.
Okay, thank you for the reminder. I'm repiecing this together in my brain like a puzzle. I just remember it bugging me because it didn't seem like there was a reason RWBY would have lied there other than like, I don't know, is this something I should share with Ironwood? Which I kind of get. But she was like so adamant about it. And then the whole season, everyone's like, yo, why did you do that? And she kind of doesn't know. And it just causes problems. And I wouldn't say it's out of character, but like, it was weird to me that RWBY would be the person who did that. And it caused a lot of issues that I feel like they wrote I don't know, looking at it, I felt like it was something where they had written out most of the story, needed that lie to happen, and just kind of said, well, we couldn't think of a better way, and just moved on. And that bugged me a lot.
I was thinking that, like, and I don't think they did this well, but I think the reason it might have been, like, implied that it happened is because when they saw the state of Mantle, they realized Ironwood was kind of going a little power crazy. And so RWBY was probably concerned about that. I don't think they executed that well at all, if that was what they were trying to do. Because I agree, it didn't read to me like as something like there was a reason for her to not tell him. And I guess she doesn't give that reason later, so maybe they weren't even trying to do it. But I'm sure there was like some portion of like the Mantle part that was trying to influence her. Because there's a line where like they're in the ship still, and Crow says something like, I don't even know if we should be talking to Ironwood right now. And I feel like that moment and like the moments in Mantle are carrying a little more weight than probably actually was delivered in the show properly.
Yeah. No, I think you're onto it there, Allie, in that I think the reason why RWBY was lying is exactly what you said. They saw the state of Mantle and they're like, okay, well, Ironwood seems to have a good plan, but obviously there are some things he's missing here. He is like, sort of, yeah, it's like you said, he's power hungry. There is like, that's the thing. He's very clearly on edge and is paranoid. And I think the concern was like, do we want to drop on him that Salem can't be killed? Because will that fuck everything up for us if he then freaks out again and causes more problems? Which ended up kind of happening, but it wasn't over the fact that Salem can't be killed. It was over the fact that Cinder was already in his base, basically. So, like, it worked for me more than it worked for you, but I agree that that's something they probably could have made a little bit more obvious if they wanted that to hit harder.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible. I was just wigged out that it was RWBY of all characters who had enough foresight to be like, I don't want to, like, I don't know, I don't want to say like she's kind of the innocent, but I think she's more trusting and more optimistic than most of the rest of the team, especially when you've got, was Crow there?
Yeah, Crow
I think
was
that's
there.
something that like maybe Crow would do. And if Crow was cool with, like, he was neutral, if I remember afterwards, because she was like, was it a good idea to lie to Ironwood? And cosmically, no, it wasn't in the end, but not for the reasons that she didn't tell him. I don't know. It's just a little bit of dirty writing. I think it could have been cleaned.
Yeah, I think that's valid. Another thing I wasn't a huge fan of here, some people don't like Maria because they don't think she's funny. Not you, Maria at the show. But
I mean, I'm not funny either, so.
Aw, you're funny. But yeah, Maria didn't have a lot to do this volume. She kind of got sidelined, just hanging out with Pietro on the in the waiting in the wings, which, like, unfortunate, but again, 15-minute show. It happens.
Yeah, my biggest problem with that was more like Maria for me is kind of like what I think Brendan said earlier about Robin, where it's like, okay, this is a character who we're all pretty sure they've served their purpose, so it's time for them to go away now. But she's still there. She's still like they deliberately put her there in the background, hanging out with Pietro. And I mean, they did all escape on the ship together, I'm pretty sure. So like, maybe she'll be important again in Volume 8, but like, you deliberately have her there not doing anything.
Yeah.
Like,
why include her?
Yeah, RWBY, like, I wish they realized that RWBY volumes are short enough that it'll feel long while the show is going on, but like as a collective story, it's very okay to just put characters on a bus for a little while and be like, hey, we're gonna check into a hotel and just chill out. Let us know if anything goes on. And then they just won't be there for the whole season. It would be great if they were like, that's fine. This is a mean thing to say, it reminds me of, but I've watched all of Voltron, which I would not recommend. And that show in the latter half has a lot of problems, but one of them is the fact that they keep adding ancillary party members, like the girl I called Alora 2, who shows up to do one plot important thing, and then is just like around for the rest of the show, and it's baffling.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, Team Coffee has been on a bus since Volume 3, so they do that sometimes, but there are definitely a few characters who it's like, you're just kind of there.
I mean, they had a reason to put her on a bus. Like, she needs to get her eyes fixed. Like, you could have just had, like, I feel like it would have been just as easy to, like, have a reason to sideline her than it was to put her in these scenes.
Yeah. Allie, you didn't care for Jean Arc MILF Hunter?
Yeah, I don't like Jean, like, period, but this just doesn't at all. See the women like, oh my god, he's so handsome and young. And it just makes me think of you telling me about all the harem Jean fics, and I just
lol.
like, I hate it.
Yeah, that's valid. That's a valid
And
emotion.
I hate that Nora's like, oh, it's totally because of the haircut. I'm like, his haircut is terrible.
It's real bad.
We're not getting into Jean
Banana
hair.
head.
We're not getting into Jean haircut discourse.
Okay. Oh, that's a Discord.
That's a
There were
separate.
defenders of Jean's new haircut?
It looks better in motion. It looks better in motion.
I had less of a problem with it than I thought I would, seeing the concept art, but
And then
Great.
as a final note, Team Funky, every member of Team Funky, their gimmick is that they're all based off memes, which is a bad gimmick to begin with. But the fact that the other two members that we meet for like a few seconds this volume are based off of the dress.
Oh, that's what it is? I had no
That makes
clue.
me mad.
What can I say except cringe?
But Titties Out Man looks so good.
Can't argue with a man with his tits out. All right, we got some discourse. First of all, Ironwood. So much to say about this. Now, in my opinion, I have said before that among characters on this show, I think Ironwood has one of the best arcs out of anyone, and I stand by that statement. But not everyone feels that way, and more importantly, people are weirdly defensive of Ironwood. And I want to know how people feel about this, because there's a weird number of Ironwood did nothing wrong people, and I don't understand them, but maybe someone here does.
I think it's probably a matter of saying Ironwood. I think you're right. I think he's a very well developed character in the sense that you see where he's coming from. You see why he's paranoid because of what happened in previous volumes. You see his trust with Team RWBY broken multiple times in this season because they lie to him. Whether or not that was well done is another topic. But I wondered if people are like comparing the fact that his actions were clearly like telegraphed like why he did these things with the actions he did were okay to do also. Like
yeah.
Like
I feel
conflating the
it's
two.
something like that, like him being a good character and like well developed and being clear why his motivations being really clear is not the same as the things he's doing are an okay thing to do.
Yeah, like his actions are clearly bad, but like I think it's very like we all understand why he feels like he has to do what like we all understand why he's making the decisions he's making. They're just not good decisions.
Yeah,
The trick of any villain is just, which I guess he is by this point, is you just need to, like, you don't need to agree with them at all. Their actions just need to make sense to them, at least. They don't even need to make sense to, like, the rest of the world, but you need to understand why they think what they're doing is what they should be doing. And so the second Ironwood showed up in this show, I was like, when is he the bad guy? And
Yeah.
I was shocked that he was so reasonable for so long in this season. And then by the end, I was like, I kind of think I love Ironwood. Like, I hate him, but like, I like watching this guy.
yes, I'm in the same boat. It's like I don't think he's in the right, but again, I think he has one of the best arcs on the show. His motivations all make sense. Even his like big freak out when he becomes completely unreasonable, you know where he's coming from because he is literally triggered by the chess piece because like he is all about like control and the fact that like Cinder so easily undermined him by like, you know, hacking into his mainframe or whatever and, you know, using all of his own tools against him. Like that's the thing driving his paranoia. And so to see it happening again, he just fucking loses it. And I think that was done really well.
Yeah, I always saw him. Sorry.
No, you can go on.
Okay, I always saw him as a character that like, yeah, he's on their side for now, but like, I always kind of knew he was gonna snap eventually, just by the nature of what we see, like everything else that he does, like the mantle and stuff. It's like he's not gonna be on Team RWBY's side for the entire series.
Pug, you're like the resident Iron Daddy defender. You want to swoop in and give your thoughts here?
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but I feel that is the case. I think Ironwood has one of the most thoughtful character arcs. I think, we are kind of seeing his thinking process develop. We're kind of seeing him react to this new information. I think what I like so much about Ironwood is that I don't think so, regardless of if his decision is right or wrong, or the depravity or the morality of it, he thinks he's doing the right thing, right?
Yes.
He's not some power hungry guy. He's not like the pro-mayor villain. Like, he actually thinks that this is his best shot at saving people, which I think is what makes it interesting. Whether or not that's right, I mean, I'm uninterested in speaking on, I guess.
Right.
But I think that's what makes him so good. And when in volume 8 the team RWBY somehow manages to save Mantle, or save some part of Mantle, I think it's going to be through some means that is not available to Iron Daddy as a character, because he is not one of the main cast. I think it's going to be I think he's doing his best with what he has. I don't know that he's making the right decision, but I think he's fucking trying, and I think that's what is so likable about him.
Yeah.
That is hard to argue when he shoots a child.
Okay, side note. Obviously I don't think Ironwood is in the right by the end of this volume. However, him shooting Oscar 100% based in epic. No questions asked.
Yeah.
Dude, the line he delivers where Oscar says James, and he's like, James, that's what my friends call me. To you, it's General. And then fucking shoots him off the platform.
It's pretty good.
It's
Yeah.
so
Like,
good.
so good.
Oh my god. Also, this picture of Ironwood is like the image I use in reference to like kicking minors out of my Discord for being like wilding out. Fuck them kids. Yeah, I think we're pretty much, I mean, okay, there's a lot of fandom discourse about this one, but I think we're actually pretty much all in agreement on Ironwood here.
Yeah, one more note why I think Ironwood good actually, not right actually, good actually. Ironwood is the only the whole show has been doing this like, can we trust Ozpin? Wine glass swivel. And the answer is yes, except Ironwood is the only character where like some of his paranoia and a lot of his problems stem from the fact Ozpin didn't tell him shit ever.
Yeah.
And then nobody tells him shit ever, even though like that's the best part is because like the way he does things is often wrong, but it's not wrong for most of volume 7. Almost everything he does is pretty reasonable until like the last 2 or 3 episodes. And like after all this bullshit where like I don't want to meme my own shit, but they turned me into a bird, RWBY. That shit.
It's okay.
Well,
We
it's just,
already
like, falling-
memed that before.
Excellent. Where it's totally flat and totally stupid, and it's like, yo, he gave you bird powers and you're bitching about it? Why? You finally get a character who has actually been genuinely fucked over by Ozpin, and it's like the one they focus on the least while saying the most, and I think that's really good.
And when, Team RWBY and Team Juniper find out about the Jin secret, they actually consider quitting. There is a time where they are waffling about if this is a fight worth fighting, and Ironwood has to get that information in the worst possible high-pressure situation.
Right in the middle of everything going to shit.
Right, so, you guys got to be, sad and lay around the house and, think about it and work through your feelings as a group, and Ironwood is in, not that situation at all. So, yeah, I don't morally agree with him by the last episode, but, I mean, damn, don't you see how he got that way?
So,
Well,
Man, if
Can you
only we
edit
told
this?
him earlier.
Can you please put up that meme I sent you from Funky with the Hulk meme? Because that's exactly what happens.
oh my god, yes, I'll put that on screen. Everyone in the watching this on YouTube will see what we're talking about. So yeah, I think we're more or less in agreement on this one.
Also, one more note, about the Iron Daddy apologism.
Yes.
This is also, I think, this is the best Ironwood has ever looked in terms of character design. I wasn't really on board with the Iron Daddy stuff until now. I think this is peak Iron Daddy. It looks really good.
Yes, agreed. Hey,
You
Al.
like the evil beard, even if he's not a villain. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Allie, do you know what time it is?
Oh no, is it the kids?
It is real Rose Garden hours.
Oh no. I'm stressed.
Wait, Allie, do you go here?
I mean, I go here in the sense that I like them in the show and I don't interact with the fandom at all in any way.
I mean, that's the correct decision.
I don't even know why I like them that much. I wouldn't even say this is the prime, like, stuff. Like, Volume 7 does not have, like, the Rose Garden stuff I really like in it. It does have, I think, the most obvious, like, oh, you first, no, you, and, like, romance stuff in it. But I think the real Rose Garden stuff I like is the talks that they have in, like, Volume 5, and some of the interactions with 6. But this is definitely the most, like, I think hints that they're trying to develop this into a romance. I would say I actually like the nuts and bolts interactions more as, like, a couple thing in this volume. I'm not big on characters. I think there's a lot of Rose Garden stuff in this season where they kind of, like, look at each other and they, like, nod. I'm not a fan of that at all, personally. I'm way more for the characters having fun dialogue with each other, like nuts and bolts have in this season. That being said, I don't know why, but for some reason I just like them a lot. I think they're cute kids, even though the more Oscar grows into Ozpin, the more I really get really scared.
Yeah.
Yes. So
discourse.
So this is why I have these two on a discourse slide, because normally I don't no, I've done shipping discourse on a couple slides before, but this one in particular is like, RWBY has lots of shipping discourse, but this is one of the few discoursey ships that, like, looks like it could very well become canon based off of, like, the few hints we have here and there, and particularly a couple scenes in this volume. So I figured if there was ever a time to talk about it, it would be now. I think, yeah, the thing with Rose Garden for me, aside from, you know, standard heterophobia, is the fact that, like, it is the body sharing thing, and that it's always going to be kind of weird that Oscar is slowly turning into Ozpin. Which, on the one hand, I kind of like some of the moments where Oscar sort of his own accord starts maturing and seeming and talking a little more like Ozpin, because I think it makes him a more interesting character.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah.
But from
in the context of this ship only, it stresses me out. But I do really enjoy, like, the idea of Oscar being like, everyone around him's like, oh, soon you won't even be like yourself. You'll be like Ozpin again. And he's like, oh, okay. I like how everyone around him is so like, yeah, that just happens. And Oscar's like, well, what about me?
Wait a minute.
I think on paper, I think Oscar Pine has the potential to be the most interesting character in all of RWBY. I don't think he will be, but I love the idea of the inherent horror of your body inevitably being taken over by a weird silver fox immortal. And I kind of like, first of all, again, on paper, I do not actively ship this, and I don't think they've done enough for me to actually ship it. Mm-hmm. But I like the idea of plucky, dumb, optimistic heroine and fish out of water who did not want to be here and barely chose to be here and doesn't really have a choice to be here in the long run, having a really interesting dynamic together. And the idea of them falling for each other and the inherent horror of slowly losing your loved one as he is taken over by a different person, I think that's less, ew, icky date, like age discourse, and more, you wouldn't be in love with that person and you'd fucking hate it. I think that's wildly interesting. I don't think they're going to explore any of that, but I think it's really cool.
Yeah, actually, I think that's an interesting take on it, because there is a horror there of the idea of, like, pretty soon Oscar won't be himself anymore, and that is something that I hope they get more into, because it's crunchy and interesting and will hopefully elevate Oscar from the small bean uwu farm boy that Pug hates so much to a character that has a bit more depth to him.
Oscar, I've always kind of liked Oscar just because I like Aaron Dismuke, and it was nice to hear him in this, and he does a great job imitating Ozpin.
He does.
He's done one of my favorite things, which is there's this phenomenon where when you're neutral on one character and you hate another character, and the neutral character kicks the shit out of the character you hate, you kind of start liking the neutral character just for that. And Ozpin beating Leo with a cane was or Oscar doing that, absolutely that for me. Very good.
It's like, fuck this dude. Yeah, it's valid. Maria, do you have thoughts on these two?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that's been said of like I like it as a ship, and I think they are kind of leaving crumbs down that this could potentially be canon, and to discourse. Oh god.
Yeah, every time Rose Garden Discourse comes up, I always think of that art that someone drew. This was, oh god, I gotta find this. It was a post on Funky a while ago where it's like, Ozpin, I think I might have mentioned this in Volume 4, the art of, like, the inside of Oscar's mind, and it's, like, a room adorned with, like lewd RWBY art and, like, a body pillow and shit, and Ozpin, like, cowering in the corner, like, terrified.
I don't like that.
Like, that's terrible, but also it makes me laugh, so...
It is funny, but I don't like it.
That's hilarious.
Pug, do you have any thoughts on this? Because I feel like we don't want to fight over this one, so...
We don't want to fight over this one. I think the short answer is, do straight people deserve rights? No, nuts and bolts is right there. I think the long answer is yucky age discourse, boo-hoo, your ship is problematic, do not interact, whatever the kids are saying these days on Twitter. But I think it could be kind of what Jello said. I think there is an interesting way to go down this arc. I feel like it's more likely that instead somehow Ozpin will sacrifice himself to end Salem and Oscar will have his body again, and then Rose Garden won't be problematic, blah, 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 safest option.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm predicting too.
That's a very real possibility, and I think what we've run up to here is another instance of how good this is depends heavily on what happens in the next couple of volumes, and so, sadly, this is something we won't really have good answers to for a while, you know.
I did want to talk about something in relation to straight people not having rights, just because, and I was kind of noticing this, especially with Fair Game, and we're going to talk about that in a sec, but if we're talking about, like, I guess nuts and bolts compared to Rose Garden, I feel like the straight ships in RWBY are played very, and I guess you could argue with me if you want, because I'm curious what other people think, but I feel like the straight ships in RWBY are very explicit and very, like, they're trying to develop a romance. Like, Renora is so obvious from, like, the first scene they have together. Jean and Pyrrha is so obvious. The Jean Weiss stuff is really obvious. But a lot of, like, the, like, gay ships, whether they are, like, necessarily canon, I think Ilya is, like, the main outlier. But, like, nuts and bolts, I think, personally, Bumblebee is, like, very not explicit to the point where I'm like wondering how much of it Rooster Teeth is actually intending for it to be a ship or not. And I think that's just like an issue with the ship writing in the show in general.
Allie, I think what you're onto there is the fact that people who ship Femslash love yearning. And if you have two characters looking at each other for long enough, you can read a lot of yearning into that.
That's true. The looking at each other doesn't do it for me, but I understand.
I'm
with you there.
I think the audience is a lot gayer than the show is kind of what's happening.
Yeah, I
think
agree.
every audience is gayer than almost every show is.
That is true. Except, like, She-Ra. That show was pretty fucking gay.
I can't imagine a gayer audience than She-Ra, so yeah.
All right, it's time for the big discourse this volume. Let's finally get into it. Let's talk about Fair Game. So, if you're not, like, ass deep in the fandom, you may not know the full context for this, which is RWBY infamously has a shipping... The shipping culture is insane. Everyone knows that, like, people ship everyone with everyone. But the vast, vast majority of those ships are Femslash and a decent amount of het, but there's very, very little slash in RWBY fandom. Like, sea monkeys, which is Sun and Neptune, on the podcast, we've talked about how that's a good ship before, and it has its audience, but it's not very big. It was never like a major ship. And then Fair Game shows up, right? And out of nowhere, it skyrockets to, I think, like the 3rd or 4th highest fic count on AO3 in like a year for a fandom that's been going since 2013. So people were like super invested in this one from the jump. And I think part of that is because the lack of good potential slash pairings meant that, you know, the audience that existed there for that kind of pairing was like, they were hungry. They were ready for anything. And then they got something that was like, as Pug said, so like comically self-indulgent and like obvious and so flirty in a way that we don't get from like a lot of the actual canon couples on this show, that like it immediately exploded in popularity, and then Clover died immediately. So the question here is basically A, is this queer baiting? B, is this bury your gays? Or C, is this some other thing, and actually the writing team did nothing wrong? Who has strong gay feelings on this?
I
Nope.
can talk.
Noah?
I guess.
All right, Allie, go in.
Well, okay. Can I ask you, Max? Because we were talking about this a while ago, and you said something where, like, because, like, the RWBY is kind of interacts with the fandom a lot, when Fair Game was starting to gain popularity, they didn't talk about it very much while the season was airing. Because they were, and I guess, do you know if they were actually concerned because people were shipping it and they knew that Clover was going to die? And they're like, oh no, we fucked up. And they just didn't talk about it.
Well, that's my perspective. I think they fucked up.
Okay. Because the thing I was talking about earlier, where the gay ships in this show, whether it's fem slash or slash, I feel like a lot of the times, I don't know, dude, Miles and Carrie to me just don't seem to realize that when someone winks at someone, it's not like, hey, friend, wink. And like, it means something, you guys.
That is exactly my interpretation, yes.
Like, but I feel like they might just not understand that or something, because it's just weird to me, because in the past they've had moments where it was like with the pilot where someone told them, hey, don't make that character gay, and then kill him immediately. And so it would be really shocking to me if they were like actually trying to make Clover gay and then kill him. I think what probably actually happened, at least internally, is that they're writing this character to just be a kind of development for Crow, and then kill him off, and then Crow unfortunately has to live through yet another tragedy. And then they didn't realize that the interactions they were having, and by making him so much like a complete opposite, but still like they can still interact well with each other, they were creating like a relationship that was actually like romantic. And they're like, oopsie daisy, and then they kill him. I think that's what actually happened. I don't think it's excuses the fact that they just didn't realize it, though, because to me, queerbaiting has to have some kind of intent behind it, where like they're literally trying to fake out the audience by saying, here's a gay character, haha, just kidding, they're dead. I don't think that's what happened, but I don't think it should be like totally excused either, that they had these two characters that seemed like they were going to be in a relationship, and then one of them dies.
I pretty much agree with that. Pug, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I guess I think about this in a slightly different way from the RWBY fandom at large. The RWBY fandom interprets queer representation as their ship being canon. So, and I mean that in the nicest, softest way possible, because like I see people pushing for Bumblebee being canon because they want confirmed queer characters, and I'm like, yes, Blake could be a confirmed queer character without her being in a relationship with Yang, right? Like those are actually two different things. It's another thing entirely to say I would like my media to not just have a queer character, I actually would like a queer romance, right? So those, to me, those are kind of separate ideas that I think awkwardly get conflated a lot in the fandom. I've watched this volume now 3 times. And hey, I write a lot of slash fiction, and I usually have very little to work with. You know, if my characters are in a manga panel together, I'm going to screen cap that. You know what I mean? Like, I usually have very little to go off with. It is hard for me to see this scene with the magenta sky and Crow tenderly holding Clover in his arms while he dies and they have this meaningful moment and not seeing it play for romance. It's hard for me to see these wild fucking soulmate AU lines that are so goddamn self-indulgent. If it didn't work so well, it would be cringe. It would be complete and utter cringe without seeing that play for romance. I agree with Allie that queerbaiting actually... I think queerbaiting got very popular around the supernatural fandom, and that definition of it is not actually correct. I think queerbaiting does have to have some intent behind it and isn't just, I like this ship and I'm reading into it. But it's hard for me to give Miles and Carrie a pass when it feels so fucking blatant and it feels so obvious. I actually see an alternate universe in which they do something very similar to Overwatch, where there's like a supplemental short story about Clover and his ex-boyfriend or whatever. I see that universe happening. I'm not arguing that that's like exactly what happened, because they obviously can't do that right now, right? They would get screamed at for a bury your gaze trope. But I don't want to write them off as like, oh, they were just ignorant, so they get a free pass. I do see something in the canon, and I do think they are partially responsible, but I want to separate that from the fact that crying for your ship to be canon is not the same as asking for queer representation.
Brendan, do you have any thoughts on this?
They're pretty in line with what's been said. I am always, this is not a great sentence to say, I'm always real hesitant to cry queer baiting about anything, because specifically it does require that malicious intent, like you guys have said.
The mens rea.
Yeah. I think there's kind of a gradient of things that people will collectively label as queer baiting, and a lot of them are just dumb writing. And I think this is dumb writing. I will say, speaking there's no way to phrase this that doesn't just make me sound dumb. Speaking as a man with a boyfriend, and also someone who is just very dumb and has a history of being super oblivious, I opened this episode by saying, when I saw Clover's lines, I went, ooh, are they giving Crow a boyfriend? Asterisk, I bet that'll piss his previous VA off. That's very funny. And then I watched the show and went, oh, no, they aren't. And I didn't mean then like, damn it, he's not gay. I meant, it's nice that Crow has a friend. and I am bi. So like, maybe I read it bad, but I was just there for Crow being happy with like a good foil to him, like in powers and in personality and in being a cop. And it was neat to see them interact. And halfway through the season, I was like, I wonder how they'll kill him. Would not have predicted the way they killed him. But I didn't read them as romantic, though you guys make a very good case for it.
Brendan, you're the target audience. You read it the way that it was quote unquote supposed to be read.
No, you know what's hilarious is I'm not the target audience, but I am the target sexuality. And like, I totally missed it. Apparently, I missed any subtext and just went, yay, they are friends. And I was happy with that.
Just guys being dudes.
It was nice to see Crow have like a healthy relationship with a person. And I'm just satisfied with that. And I don't need it to be romantic. So maybe I was already satisfied and didn't want anything more. So I wasn't looking for it. But yeah, in short, I would not say queer baiting. I would just say dumb. But like, I often say dumb for the writing on this show. So it like barely even registers as a blip on my radar, to be totally honest.
Man, ain't that the truth? Just fucking, probably, maybe not queer baiting, but just fucking stupid, man. Like, come on! Come on! Alright, this episode's been running very long. We gotta wrap things up. Final thoughts on this volume, Pug.
really like this volume. I like a lot that's going on. I like that Cinder gets a moment to shine. I like that Iron Daddy kind of has a really interesting arc that I think has great payoff. I'm excited to see where it goes next, and hopefully there is as little Oscar in Volume 8 as there is in 7.
Got him! Maria.
Finally, RWBY is good. This is my favorite volume. You know, this is like the payoff of like having to drudge your way through the early volumes and like the fandom arc. It's like finally we have a really, really just great volume.
This is like, I always joke that RWBY fandom is a sorority, and the first 3 volumes are the hazing, and then after you get through them, you're in it forever. This volume is like the big party at the end of the year, where everyone's just going nuts, because we made it. Brendan.
Yeah, no, this is the first RWBY volume where I've enjoyed it non-ironically more than I have enjoyed laughing at it with my friends.
And that says a lot, honestly.
It's not a lot more, it's like 60-40, but that ratio has been slowly ticking up to actual enjoyment more and more, except in Volume 5, where it was just kind of boredom and annoyance the whole time.
Yeah, 5 was pretty bad. That was more or less the conclusion we came to on the 5 podcast. Allie?
Great season. I love the fights. I think they do really interesting stuff for the characters, especially Ironwood and the Shinee family. And I really hope they keep the momentum going in the next season, too.
Yeah! What will happen in the next season? Who knows? I have seen very little, like, theorizing or, like, really much of anything in the way of, like, hiatus content, just because the ending of this volume was so bonkers that, like, who even knows what'll happen next? And we won't even find out. Will there be another Max and RWBY episode? Who knows? There's gonna be a...
Now you gotta do one on Chibi.
There will, by the way... Oh, fuck no. There will, by the way, be a... There will be a Patreon exclusive bonus episode where me and Mercedes just make fun of people's ships for like 2 hours straight while we're both plastered. So if you want to see that, go subscribe to my Patreon and it'll be up sometime in the next couple of weeks. But other than that, this has been possibly the final episode of Max and RWBY. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed taking this journey back through my favorite show that I don't know why I like it with me. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Say bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.